Chapter 293. Go to watch net. Seeing that Yan Hua's question was so tricky, Zhou Qin couldn't help frowning and saying, then shouldn't Li Yundong debate with him in front of everyone? Chao Yi, Zhuang Yiting, and Lu Yuehong said in unison, no. Chao Yi said, although the scene in front of us has nothing to do with fighting, if it gets out and people from other sects hear that our leader lost to a student who is not a cultivator, how will they look at our leader? How will our leader gain a foothold in the cultivation world? Hearing this, Zhou Qin stopped talking and looked at the rostrum with a worried face. Go to watch net. When Li Yundong heard Yan Hua's words, he was also shocked and began to look at the opponent in front of him again. He knew that this question was tricky and could not be answered directly. After pondering for a while, he said, "You asked me whether Buddha or man came first. Then let me ask you, which one do you think came first, the chicken or the egg?" This question caused an uproar among the students in the playground. Many people burst into laughter, cheering for Li Yundong's cunning response and shameless rhetorical question. Whether Buddha or man came first, and whether the chicken or the egg came first, these were all unsolvable questions. Li Yundong cleverly avoided the important and focused on the trivial, blocking the other party's question with a rhetorical question. Su Chan even laughed and said, "Wonderful, why didn't I think of that?" Zhou Qin also smiled slightly and said with respect and admiration, "Sly." Yan Hua saw that his question had not stumped Li Yundong. If he asked another question, it would be meaningless. Moreover, he didn't expect that his questions would be able to knock Li Yundong down. He said loudly, "The body is a Bodhi tree, and the heart is like a mirror. Always wipe the Buddha diligently, and don't let dust stir up." "What do you mean by that?" Li Yundong immediately said without thinking, "Always take care of your mind and state of mind. Through continuous cultivation, you can resist the temptation of the outside world and all kinds of evil spirits. This is a kind of mentality that emphasizes the role of cultivation. It is the cultivation philosophy of the eminent monk Shinshio." After Li Yundong finished speaking, he immediately asked loudly, "There is no Bodhi tree, and a mirror is not a mirror. There is nothing, so where does dust stir up?" "What do you mean?" Yan Hua immediately said, "This is 6th Patriarch Huineng's Gatha. It says that there are not so many troubles in the world, so why do we have to rub the mirror of clarity in our hearts every day?" Zhou Qin watched as the two of them asked each other about the two classic Buddhist verses. She was very familiar with them, but she didn't know why they were asking such questions. She asked Su Chan again, "What are they talking about now?" Su Chan said, "Just now, the two of them were testing each other's reaction and agility. Now, they are testing each other's theoretical foundation of Buddhism." These two hymns were written by two disciples of the fifth ancestor Hongren of the Zen sect of Buddhism. Yan Hua asked about the hymn written by Shinsu, while Li Yundong asked about the hymn written by the sixth ancestor Huineng. Watch net. Later, because of these two poems, the Buddhist Zen sect split into the north and the south. They represent two different approaches to cultivation. Zhou Qin nodded and stopped talking, continuing to look up at the field. After Li Yundong and Yan Hua tested each other's thinking reaction and Buddhist foundation, they finally stopped testing each other and directly engaged in close combat. Yan Hua said loudly, "There is a saying in the first volume of Mahaprajnaparamita, different emptiness without form, different emptiness without form. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. Please explain what form is." Li Yundong immediately said, "The four elements are all emptiness, and the 5 skandhas are not there. But because all the dharmas have gathered into this body, although the form of form comes and goes back and forth, it evolves into millions of ends and forms the boundless world. Therefore, in the final analysis, form is one." Yan Hua said again, "If the form is one, then please explain what is emptiness." Li Yundong said, "Form is not its own form. It arises from cause and effect, so it returns to one. Emptiness is not a vacuum, but the great treasury of the void. If we talk about its origin, it also returns to one. This is the principle of all dharmas returning to one. Yan Hua immediately asked, then where does all dharmas return to one? Li Yundong laughed and said, all dharmas return to one. One is still one. Yan Hua saw that he couldn't answer Li Yundong's questions, so he was unwilling to give up and asked again, what is the eyeless method? Li Yundong replied casually, I hate to see flowers growing together when the curtain is closed, and I fear to see swallows perching on a high building. Yan Hua asked again, what is the earless technique? Li Yundong said, don't teach the flute to frighten the willows, don't teach the flute to provoke the phoenix. Yan Hua asked again, what is the noseless technique? Li Yundong immediately said, the orchid is not stained by the king's aura, and the daylily is not stained by the fragrance of a girl. What is the tongueless art? Fortunately, I did not plunder the black prison. Why are you spitting out green lotus? What is peerless body art? Accustomed to moving the unclean to the west, cursing the unruly Qin to learn from Shaolin. What is the unintentional method? Only for the sake of love to become a minor tribulation, but because it does not hinder the spiritual platform. Yan Hua fired off a barrage of questions, and Li Yundong answered them without pause. The two of them fought back and forth like soldiers engaged in hand-to-hand combat, causing the students on the sports ground to burst into cheers. Watch net. Even the teachers who had been unhappy before nodded secretly at this time, feeling admiration for the two young people on the rostrum who dared to debate the Dharma in public in front of thousands of people. Chao Yi, Su Chan, and the other cultivators were even more impressed. Chao Yi nodded and said, this boy's previous questions were very tricky. If it were me, I might not have been able to answer them. Lu Yuehong praised, it's rare that the leader is so young, but he has also studied the Dharma so well. Amazing, really amazing. Zhuang Yiting said, the young man who argued with the leader is also very good, but I don't know what his relationship with Yan Fang is. Most of the students didn't understand the meaning of the debate between Li Yundong and Yan Hua, but the experts could see the artistry, while the laymen could just watch the fun. They only felt that the battle between Li Yundong and Yan Hua was very fierce. It didn't matter whether they understood it or not. But in terms of the initiative, it seemed that Yan Hua had the initiative, but in terms of momentum, Li Yundong was able to block soldiers with arms and water with earth. His words and actions were really full of spirit and spirit. At this time, many students on the playground couldn't help but cheer for Li Yundong. But as soon as they started to cheer, some people stopped them and said, you're silly. You can't cheer for Li Yundong, or Yan Hua will go back on his word. You should cheer and oppose him. This is the support for Li Yundong. Only then did they remember what Yan Hua had said before. They all laughed and said, isn't that simple? For a moment, many people on the field began to cheer. At first, there were only a few, but gradually, more and more people began to cheer. Some people didn't understand, so they asked for the reason. After hearing the explanation, they suddenly laughed and said, so that's how it is. Well, it's good to make him admit his defeat. Su Chan and the others, who were standing next to the playground, were shocked to see more and more people start to boo Li Yundong. But when they asked for the reason, they all laughed. Su Chan was a mischievous girl and liked to play with Li Yundong the most. Thinking that she hadn't ruined Li Yundong's show in public, she suddenly felt that this matter was novel and exciting. She immediately clapped her hands and said, okay, let's shout together. After that, she shouted as if she wanted the world to be in chaos. The foxes of the younger generation of the Fox Zen school seemed to follow Su Chan's lead. Seeing her shout, they also shouted. Although Chao Yi and the others felt that something was wrong, they couldn't tell what was wrong. The little foxes had never expected that it would cause a beauty effect. Many of the men who had come to watch the fun heard them shout and immediately followed suit. At first, these people had been cheering to help Li Yundong, but they hadn't expected that people not only had herd mentality, but also had compassion. Some people saw that Li Yundong was extremely strong on the stage and shone brightly, so they couldn't help but begin to sympathize with Yan Hua. Some people simply turned it into reality and began to cheer for Li Yundong. At this time, as soon as Li Yunyang opened his mouth on the stage, there would be thunderous boos and boos from the audience. No matter how powerful his jinshi was and how high his cultivation was, it was extremely difficult for him to compete with the noise of every word he said. In particular, he could vaguely hear the sound of girls booing. Li Yundong looked in the direction of the voice and saw Su Chan and a group of little foxes booing. Li Yundong suddenly became angry. He was so angry in his heart. It's fine if these people booed me, but why are you also booing me? How dare you help an outsider? At this time, Yan Hua found that Li Yundong's thinking had begun to be unable to keep up with him, especially when his face darkened and his eyes kept sweeping down the stage. He was overjoyed and said proudly, "Now do you know what it feels like to be booed and cheered by everyone?" Li Yundong's face turned blue. He found that he had fallen into Yan Hua's trap. As a cultivator, he was strong-willed, but it was too difficult for him to think without any hindrance in the midst of thousands of people's objections and boos. Especially Su Chan, the little girl, who was foolishly joining in the uproar. She didn't realize at all that they had fallen into Yan Hua's trap. Li Yundong snorted coldly and argued with Yan Hua. But now, the mentality of most of the students had completely changed. They only felt that booing Li Yundong, a legendary figure in the school, was very fun and exciting. The rebellious mentality defeated the mentality of worshipping the strong. Many people began to look forward to Li Yundong's reaction after he failed in the discussion. As soon as Li Yundong opened his mouth, there was a burst of booing from the audience. Every time he threw out an argument, the audience said in unison, "Objection, objection." When Li Yundong refuted Yan Hua's point of view, they encouraged Yan Hua, "Agree, agree." Even if Li Yundong had great ability, it was impossible for him to play in this situation without any hindrance. He couldn't help but say angrily to the students under the playground, "Hey, you guys are making a lot of noise." Seeing that Li Yundong finally couldn't help it, the students under the stage burst out laughing. They were proud and happy, as if they had done a great prank. Li Yundong said loudly, "Do you agree with whatever I object to, and oppose whatever I agree with?" The students under the stage laughed and said, "Yes." Li Yundong turned his face to Yan Hua and said, "As long as I can make these guys unable to oppose me, I will win this discussion, right?" At this time, Yan Hua saw that everyone on the field had switched sides to support him. He was very proud and said arrogantly, "Yes, you have a way to make them unable to oppose you. Naturally, I can't outtalk you. I will immediately admit defeat." Li Yundong turned his face again and said to the students inside and outside the playground, "Do you all oppose whatever I agree with? Do you all agree with whatever I object to?" The students on the field laughed and said, "Yes, that's right. As long as you agree with it, we will oppose it. As long as you oppose it, we will agree with it." Li Yundong said loudly, "Well, listen carefully." After that, Li Yundong took a deep breath and said a famous sentence that shocked the universe and made the Bodhisattva shake his head in fear. Li Yundong roared, "I object to eating sh*t. For a moment, the playground was extremely quiet, and there was no sound on the field. Last week, the children's flowers were very powerful and ranked 7th. This week, there should be 4 updates. However, because I was going to attend the annual meeting this week, I cheekily asked for a leave from the children. There were still 2 updates a day, but the extra updates were temporarily cancelled. I will come back from Beijing on the 23rd. In other words, there were 3 updates on Tuesday this week. Tomorrow is Wednesday, and I will go to Beijing and won't be back until next Thursday. When I come back, I will make up for the 3 updates I owe. In other words, I owe the children 3 chapters this week. When I come back from the annual meeting, I will make up for it. Cupping one's hands and bowing. Chapter 294. Go to watch net. Li Yundong's roar was like a bolt from the blue, leaving everyone on and off the stage speechless. Go to watch net. Yan Hua was even more dumbfounded, unable to react for a moment. The playground fell into an unprecedented silence, but soon a burst of earth-shattering laughter broke out. All the teachers and students on the playground were laughing their heads off. Some teachers laughed so hard that they almost lost their breath. Even the vice principal and the deputy mayor, who had been trying to maintain their image, couldn't help but have their faces twitch. Li Yundong didn't care about the laughter of the students below the playground. He turned to look at Yan Hua and asked, "Do you object?" Yan Hua had been too proud before and had fallen into Li Yundong's trap. At this time, he was dumbfounded and couldn't say anything. Li Yundong shouted to the students below the playground, "Do you object?" The students laughed wildly. "No, no. Who would dare to object?" Li Yundong snorted, glanced at Yan Hua, and said, "So, I won. Are you convinced?" Who would be convinced? However, Yan Hua couldn't say anything unconvinced, because this was the rule he had just said. If he were to go back on his word in the blink of an eye, he would immediately beat the students on the stage to death. His face flushed red, and he snorted angrily. Without replying, he directly rushed off the rostrum, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. Seeing him leave, Li Yundong turned his eyes to Feng Na, who was laughing so hard that she couldn't stand up straight. He glared at her and said, "Don't do this kind of thing again in the future. Don't you think I'm annoying enough?" After that, he walked off the rostrum, ignoring the vice principal, the deputy mayor, and the others, and went straight to Su Chan and the others. He walked up to the group of foxes, glared at Su Chan, and then said with a sullen face, "Come with me." Su Chan didn't notice the sullen expression in Li Yundong's eyes. She wiped away the tears of laughter and followed Li Yundong obediently. Chao Yi and the others noticed. Chao Yi whispered, "Oh no, the leader is angry." Lu Yuehong and Zhuang Yiting also whispered together, "What should we do?" The three big foxes looked at each other and smiled bitterly. "Let's follow them. It seems that this time, our good deed has turned into a disaster." Seeing that they were all following Li Yundong, Zhou Qin sighed and had no choice but to follow them. Li Yundong walked alone with a dark face, not saying a word. The atmosphere was very depressing. A large group of beautiful women followed behind him. From Su Chan to Zhou Qin, from Chao Yi and the other big foxes to the little foxes, all of them were stunning beauties. This group of beautiful women followed behind Li Yundong in a mighty manner. All of them lowered their heads, like obedient wives who had done something wrong, which was very eye-catching. Watch net. 7 K.O.M. Some of the students who knew Li Yundong exclaimed one after another, sighing that Li Yundong was very lucky with women. But Li Yundong knew that if he didn't control this group of guys well, he was afraid that he would have to live a dark life in the future. He would have to clean up after these guys every day without rest. Li Yundong stopped at the gazebo in the garden behind the school. He sat down in the gazebo. Su Chan tried to sit in front of him, but Li Yundong barked at her. "Who said you could sit? Stay where you are." Su Chan yelled at Li Yundong. Su Chan was startled and jumped up. She stared at Li Yundong with her eyes wide open, as if she didn't understand what she had done wrong. Li Yundong looked at the little girl who was looking at him eagerly. Her appearance was really lovable. If it had been in the past, he would have immediately held her in his arms and doted on her, but now he couldn't do that. Because Li Yundong knew that he was now the leader of the Fox Zen school, a large group of people would be watching his every word and action. If he didn't handle the current situation well, there would be no way to control this group of fox spirits in the future. Therefore, he decided to start with the people closest to him. Li Yundong pulled a long face and shouted at Su Chan, "Do you know why I asked you to stand?" Su Chan had never seen Li Yundong speak to her in such a stern tone with such a serious face. She was so scared that her face turned pale. She shook her head in panic, but she couldn't say anything. Seeing this, Li Yundong's heart softened and he almost let it go. However, when he saw the big and small foxes crowding the pavilion, he immediately hardened his heart and shouted, "You don't know? If you don't know, just keep standing. Tell me when you know." Su Chan was shocked, and tears fell down, but she didn't dare to cry out loud, for fear that she would make Li Yundong unhappy again. So she stood in the pavilion and didn't speak. Zhou Qing, who was standing next to her, opened her mouth as if she wanted to speak up for Su Chan. But at this time, Li Yundong cast her a sharp look, as if warning her not to speak. Zhou Qin immediately shut her mouth and didn't dare to make a sound. The other little fox spirits in the pavilion had originally seen the relationship between Li Yundong and Su Chan, and in fact, all of them had their own ideas. They all felt that their beauty was not inferior to Su Chan's, and their figures were not inferior to hers. Moreover, Li Yundong was not only young and handsome, but also had excellent Shintong cultivation. He was also their savior. Many of the little fox spirits had the idea that if Su Chan could be the leader's lover, why couldn't they be? With this idea in mind, their minds became very active. Once their minds became active, they couldn't control themselves, and their eyes were always full of eagerness. But at this time, seeing that Li Yundong didn't even give face to the people closest to him and scolded them in front of so many people, their faces suddenly turned pale with fear and their hearts beat wildly. Go to the Fox News Network. Even Su Chan was being scolded like this. What about me? The restless thoughts of the little foxes immediately calmed down, and they all became uneasy. Chao Yi and the others naturally knew that Li Yundong was making an example out of them, but they hadn't expected that he would actually use Su Chan as an example. For a moment, they realized that although Li Yundong, the new leader, was young and looked gentle and casual, he was very ambitious and decisive. He had both tenderness and chivalry in his heart, but he also had an iron fist. At this time, Li Yundong said to Su Chan with a livid face, "It's okay that you usually make trouble with me. I won't say anything, and I can accept anything you do. But now you're actually making trouble with your Shibwa and Shiji. Do you know what kind of place this is? Do you know who the people on the stage are? They are government officials. No matter how small their power is, they have more power than you and me. Do you think it's Mount Tianlong? Do you think it's the Fox Zen School? Do you know how it will end when things get out of hand? Do you think I can fight? No matter how good I am at fighting, can I fight against secular mortals? Yan Hua, an ordinary student, was able to force me to the point that I had no choice but to take his move in front of everyone's eyes. Do you really think that I'm the Jade Emperor who reigns supreme in this world?" Li Yundong's words seemed to be lecturing Su Chan, but in fact, they were meant for Chao Yi and the others to hear. Su Chan's heart was like a mirror, but she still couldn't stand Li Yundong lecturing her in front of everyone. Her tears fell like pearls from a broken necklace. Chao Yi, Lu Yuehong, and Zhuang Yiting looked at each other. Chao Yi stepped forward and said, "Leader, I took the initiative to bring them out. It's not Chan'er's fault. If you want to punish someone, punish me." After that, she was about to kneel down in front of everyone. Li Yundong quickly stood up to support her and said, "Shibwa Chao Yi, what are you doing?" Chao Yi said, "Leader, as the saying goes, a country has its laws and a family has its rules. Our Fox Zen School naturally has our own rules. Leader, you are right. I was indeed rash in this matter. I didn't take into account the situation at that time. Please punish me." As she spoke, she was about to kneel down again. Li Yundong held her up, but Lu Yuehong, who was next to him, also said, "Leader, in fact, we also have our own difficulties. We are all worried that after you take over our Fox Zen School, you will feel that there will be one more burden and in the end, you will abandon us. If that happens, we can only sit and wait for death. That's why we came down the mountain to help you secretly, but we didn't expect that in the end, we would be in trouble. I went to find Sixth Shimmy first. If you want to blame someone, blame me. As she said this, she also knelt down. Li Yunyang quickly freed another hand to support Lu Yuehong, but Zhuang Yiting, who was beside him, said, "Leader, you are kind-hearted and chivalrous. We all admire you very much. We all hope that you can be the leader for a long time. Chana is right. It's our fault in this matter. Please punish us." With a plop, Zhuang Yiting also knelt down. Li Yundong held down Chao Yi and Lu Yuehong with only 2 hands, but he couldn't hold down Zhuang Yiting. He said repeatedly, "What are you doing? Stand up." When the other little foxes of the Fox Zen school saw that the 3 Shirbua had knelt down, they didn't dare to remain standing. They all followed suit and knelt down. For a moment, the pavilion was full of beautiful women kneeling on the ground. Some of the people who had come with the big and small fox spirits to watch the fun saw this scene. They couldn't help but murmur, "Oh my, what's the background of this boy? It's one thing for him to eat so many beautiful women alone, but he even has a master-servant complex. Isn't it too ridiculous?" When Li Yundong saw that Chao Yi and the other 2 Shirbua, who were the most senior in the Fox Zen school, had actually knelt down on their own, his anger dissipated a lot. He said in a deep voice, "Everyone, please get up. I can understand your worries. Although I, Li Yundong, was given the order in the face of danger and had no choice, Li Yundong, am a man of my word. Since I promised to be the leader of the Fox Zen school, I will not go back on my word, let alone give up halfway." These words made Chao Yi and the others overjoyed at the same time. They raised their heads and said in unison, "Amitba. This is really a great fortune for our Fox Zen school." Li Yundong said, "But you have to promise me a few things. Otherwise, even if you kneel through the stone slabs, I won't be the leader." Chao Yi and the others quickly asked, "What things?" Li Yundong said, "First of all, you can't act on your own. You have to tell me if you want to do something." Chao Yi and the others smiled and said, "Of course, you have to respect the leader." Li Yundong added, "Second, you can't go down the mountain without permission, unless there are foreign enemies invading and you can't resist them." Chao Yi and the others nodded again. "Of course." Li Yundong continued, "Third, don't kneel down easily in the future. Times are different now, and this is no longer popular." Just these 3, nothing else." Chao Yi and the others were shocked. "That's all?" Li Yundong nodded and said, "Indeed. How long are you going to kneel? Why don't you get up? If others see you, they will think that I mistreated you." Chao Yi and the others laughed, stood up, and praised, "Leader, you really have a bodhisattva's heart. I thought that there would be extremely strict rules, but I didn't expect that they would be much more relaxed than when the former leader was here." Seeing that Chao Yi and the others had agreed, Li Yundong said with a smile, "I'm not the reincarnation of the Devil King. Why are you making it sound so scary? If you have nothing to do now, hurry back to the mountain. Look at what you're wearing. Aren't you afraid of attracting reporters? Tomorrow, many people will definitely take videos of you with their mobile phones and post them directly on the internet. At that time, it will be hard for the Fox Zen school not to become famous." Chao Yi smiled and said, "Yes, leader is right. We'll go back now." After saying that, she said goodbye to Li Yundong with the big and small fox spirits and left the pavilion. As soon as they left, the pavilion immediately became empty. Zhou Qin, who had been silent for a long time, also said, "Master, I have something to do first. I'll come back to you later." Li Yundong knew that Zhou Qin was giving him a chance to be alone with Su Chan. He smiled gratefully at Zhou Qin. After watching her disappear from his sight, he gently hugged Su Chan and said softly with a smile, "What's wrong?" Have you been wronged? Su Chan's eyes were misty with tears. She pouted and hit Li Yundong with her hand. You're so annoying. You scared me to death just now. I thought you were going to expel me from the sect. Li Yundong said softly, How could I? How could I bear to do that? But you saw the situation just now. If I don't make an example of you, I'm afraid that I will never have a peaceful day as the leader. Chao Yi and the others are your Shibwa, and there are so many of your Shiji peers here. I have to save them some face. If I don't respect the elders in front of the juniors, they won't respect me in the future. So I can only vent my anger on you. If you feel wronged now, hit me, scold me, and vent your anger on me. Su Chan smiled through her tears. She bit her lip and stared at Li Yundong, pretending to be angry. She pouted and said, Then close your eyes. I'm going to teach you a lesson. Li Yundong closed his eyes with a smile and said, Please be merciful. Don't. Before he could finish his words, he felt soft and moist lips touch his. Li Yundong shuddered as if he had been electrocuted. He immediately opened his eyes and hugged the little girl, ready to kiss her passionately. However, Su Chan giggled and ran out of the pavilion. Before she could take 2 steps, Li Yundong caught up with her and held her in his arms. Li Yundong pretended to be angry and said, Well, you want to run away when you're right in front of my mouth. Hurry up and let your leader have a good taste. Su Chan covered her face and mouth with both hands, revealing only a pair of crescent moon-like eyes. I won't let you taste it. I won't let you taste it. Who told you to be so mean to me just now? This is my lesson for you. Li Yundong laughed and said, Well, then I'll have to force myself on you. Although he said so, it was impossible for him to do so. After all, this was the back mountain of the school. It would not be fun if someone took it. The two laughed for a while, then Li Yundong walked out of the back mountain with the little girl in his arms. After a few steps, he saw Chao Yi standing not far away, as if waiting for him. Li Yundong let go of Su Chan's hand and walked up to her in confusion. He asked, Chao Yi Shibwa, what's the matter? Chao Yi smiled and said, Yes, before I went down the mountain, I saw the leader worrying about the livelihood of our Fox Zen school. At that time, I remembered this matter in my heart. Just now, it suddenly occurred to me that our Fox Zen school seems to have another industry, but it was all the responsibility of the former leader. I once heard from the former leader that he seemed to have an outer disciple managing this industry. I think if the leader is in a hurry to use money and manpower, he might as well ask this outer disciple about the situation of this industry. The Fox Zen school has an industry? When Li Yundong heard this, he was both curious and surprised. If there was an industry, then he wouldn't have to be so nervous about making money everywhere. Chapter 295. Go to Watch Network. When Chao Yi heard what Li Yundong said, she laughed and said, Of course. Otherwise, what would cultivators like us who don't work in production eat? Don't tell me they all sleep in the open. Li Yundong asked, What kind of industry is it? Chao Yi looked embarrassed and said, This industry is in Dongwu City. If the leader wants to see it, he has to go back to Dongwu City. Go to Kanwu. 7 K.O.M. Li Yundong asked in confusion, Don't you know what this industry is? Chao Yi said, It has always been managed by the leader, but in recent years, the former leader has handed over the affairs of the sect to eldest sister Mo Ashi. Ah, no, it's Yen Fong. Now Yen Fong has been defeated and fled, and the former leader is dead. I don't know what this industry is. I only know that the former leader once mentioned it. Li Yundong pondered for a while and said, Last time I looked through the things left by the former leader, Lu Yi, I didn't find anything about the industry of the Fox Zen school. Chao Yi thought for a moment and said, Maybe the leader has recorded this matter elsewhere. Li Yundong suddenly thought of something and thought, could it be that Chao Yi Shibwa wants to take this opportunity to let me go back to the Fox Zen school? He raised his eyes and saw a trace of hope in Chao Yi's eyes. Li Yundong smiled and said, I understand what you mean. You go back to the mountain first. I have something to do here and can't leave, but I will go back in 2 days. Help me find the room of the former leader, Lu Yi, and see where this industry is recorded. Chao Yi was a little disappointed, but she didn't say anything. She smiled slightly, said goodbye to Li Yundong, and left. When she walked out of the school gate, she saw Lu Yuehong and the others coming up to her, looking at her anxiously. Chao Yi shook her head slightly, and the fox spirits sighed together. Chao Yi said, the leader is busy. Let's go back first. Don't cause any more trouble for him. After the group of fox spirits left, Li Yundong obviously felt relieved. He shook his head and sighed. You guys are simply a group of walking troubles. Wherever you go, there will be trouble. Su Chan said coquettishly, you dislike me. Li Yundong feigned a look of displeasure. Yeah, you've caused me so much trouble. Of course I despise you. Su Chan and Li Yundong were used to playing around like this. She giggled and said, then, how about I massage your back? Li Yundong said with a straight face, not good. Su Chan rolled her eyes and said, then how about I give you a massage? Li Yundong snorted. Shit. If you don't have any creativity, you're not sincere at all. Su Chan thought for a moment and said, then, how about I cook for you? Li Yundong was shocked and said repeatedly, not good, not good, not good. Su Chan giggled and bent over. This is not good, that is not good. So what do you want? Li Yundong chuckled and whispered in the little girl's ear. The little girl suddenly blushed and covered her red and swollen face with her hands, giggling. Watch net. 7 K.O.M. Su Chan covered her face with both hands, but the corner of her eyes peeked out from the gap between her fingertips. She stole a glance at Li Yundong, and then her surprised and happy eyes quickly turned back. Her eyes were really charming and seductive, tickling people's hearts. Li Yundong was aroused by the girl's seductive behavior. He smiled and said, how about it? When we get back, we'll do the things that tell people to take off their clothes and pants. Su Chan giggled and ran away, leaving a string of laughter that sounded like silver bells. You're so annoying. If the two of us love each other for a long time, why would we sleep on the bed? Li Yundong laughed and chased after him. Nonsense, haven't you heard that the golden wind and jade dew are better than adulterers and lovers? Su Chan was hugged by Li Yundong and burrowed into his arms like an ostrich. She giggled and said, you're the adulterer and lover. You're so annoying. How can you talk about me like that? The two of them played for a while, and Li Yundong's eyes suddenly flashed. He saw Zhou Qin looking at them silently not far away. His heart skipped a beat, and he let go of the little girl and patted her head lovingly. Well, I won't play with you anymore. I still have something to tell Zhou Qin. Su Chan was very well behaved. She followed Li Yunyang step by step, and when she walked up to Zhou Qin, she greeted her very affectionately. Zhou Qin had watched Li Yundong and Su Chan play intimately as if there was no one else around. She couldn't help but think of the days she had spent with Li Yundong in the ward when she was hospitalized. For a moment, her heart was filled with bitterness, but these emotions only flashed in a flash and were well hidden by her. When Li Yundong came closer, she said respectfully, Master. Seeing that she was always wearing a mask, Li Yundong couldn't help but sigh and say, Zhou Qin, don't be like this. When you call me master, it makes me feel like I'm in my 70s or 80s. No matter what, we are still classmates and friends, right? Why do we have to be so distant now? You'd better call me Li Yundong, okay? Zhou Qin couldn't help biting her lip and shaking her head stubbornly. No, a teacher for a day is a father for a lifetime. There should be a difference between a senior and a junior. Li Yundong pretended to be angry and said overbearingly, but you haven't officially acknowledged me as your master yet, have you? Before you acknowledge me as your master, I still can't be considered your master. At most, I can be considered an in-name master. Go to the internet. 7KOM. Just call me by my name. It won't be too late to call me that after you've officially acknowledged me as your master. After that, he didn't allow Zhou Qin to object and said, "That's settled. By the way, I actually want to discuss something else with you." Zhou Qin opened her mouth and wanted to speak, but she saw that although Li Yundong's expression was gentle, the unquestionable momentum in his words made her unable to say anything to refute. For a moment, Zhou Qin was filled with emotion. He has grown up so fast. At first, he still had the immaturity of a boy, and he was very immature in dealing with people. But today, in the pavilion, he had used both soft and hard methods to knead the Fox Zen school like a ball of mud. Everyone was obedient, and he really had the spirit of a leader. Are some people born to be big and do great things? Zhou Qin swallowed what she wanted to say and asked, "What is it?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "It's not a good thing for us to talk here. Let's find a place to talk slowly." Zhou Qin thought for a moment and said, "Then let's find a place to drink tea and talk while drinking tea." Li Yundong thought to himself, now there are places where money is needed everywhere. I can't ask Zhou Qin to help me with things. Li Yundong didn't hide it from Zhou Qin and said, "Forget it, let's go back to my house. Let's eat and talk. Don't spend money. I've been very poor recently." When Zhou Qin heard that she could eat the food cooked by Li Yundong himself, a rare smile appeared on her cold face. "Okay, then I'll do as you say. You wait at the school gate. I'll go get the car." The three of them drove to Li Yundong's home in Hongqing New area. As soon as they entered the house, Li Yundong saw Zi Yuan meditating on the balcony and Wan Hongling sitting on the sofa, one hand holding her chin in boredom and the other pressing the TV remote control to do finger exercises. Li Yundong was stunned. He hadn't expected that Zi Yuan and Wan Hongling would be in his house. Li Yundong immediately glanced at Su Chan, afraid that the little girl would think too much. But when he looked at Su Chan, he happened to see her looking at him. He saw the little girl looking at him with a smile, secretly hooking her little finger with his, and whispering in his ear, "I believe you." Li Yundong's heart warmed. He smiled slightly, turned his head, and said to Wan Hongling, "When did you come?" Wan Hongling saw Li Yundong at a glance and jumped up. She turned her head and shouted to Zi Yuan on the balcony, "Sister Zi Yuan, he's back." Zi Yuan opened her eyes and looked at Li Yundong at the door. She stood up gracefully and bowed respectfully with one hand. "Amateus, Zi Yuan from the Lingdong sect greets Shenrenli, the leader of the Fox Zen school." Wan Hongling also joined in the fun and followed suit. "Amateus, Wan Hongling from the Lingdong sect greets Shenrenli, the leader of the Fox Zen school." Li Yundong laughed and looked at Zi Yuan carefully. Seeing that she didn't seem to be injured, he felt relieved that he had hurt her in the last fight. He quickly waved his hand and said with a smile, "Don't joke around, you two." Wan Hongling chuckled and sat back on the sofa, but Zi Yuan still said seriously, "This is not a joke. Li Yundong, you are now the leader of the Fox Zen school and bear the heavy responsibility of the sect. Your every word and action represents the Fox Zen school and directly affects the entire cultivation world. Now that you have passed the divine tribulation, have you ever thought about where you will go in the future?" Li Yundong said seriously, "This is also what I have been thinking about these 2 days. I can talk to you later. But do you know where Yan Fong is? She took Su Chan's master, Ao Wushuang, and there has been no news of her." Zi Yuan shook her head and said, "I don't know." When I returned to the Lingong sect, I didn't see her. I think she found a place to hide. It won't be easy to find her. Li Yundong thought for a while and smiled. Then I'll go cook first. We'll talk about this after dinner. After that, Li Yundong rolled up his sleeves and went into the kitchen. Zi Yuan also smiled and followed him into the kitchen, saying, "Let me help." Zhou Qin also said, "I'll help you wash the vegetables." Wan Hongling also joined in the fun. "I'll help too." Zi Yuan looked back at her at the door of the kitchen and said with a smile, "What can you do for me? Do you know how to cook? Go to the living room and wait." Wan Hongling was rejected, so she sat on the sofa in the living room and continued to play with the TV remote control. Su Chan was born to be lively, so she also jumped into the kitchen. As soon as Li Yundong saw her enter the kitchen, he immediately pointed with his finger and shouted, "Step back, keep a distance from the kitchen." Su Chan immediately pouted and said loudly, "You're so annoying. I won't make trouble." Li Yundong walked to the door and pushed her into the living room with a smile. Then he pressed her down on the sofa and said, "If you sit here obediently, you'll be helping." After that, he went into the kitchen and slammed the door. Su Chan was very unhappy. She pouted and grabbed a cushioned pillow on the sofa in her hand. She couldn't help but look at Wan Hongling, who was sitting on the other side of the sofa and had also been driven out of the kitchen. The two of them snorted at the same time, turned their heads to the other side, and sat a little further away at the same time. Li Yundong was a good cook, and Zi Yuan was also a good cook. Although Zhou Qin's cooking skills were average, she was very dexterous. The three of them quickly prepared a table of dishes. At the dining table, Li Yundong wanted to talk about something, but Zi Yuan kept her head down and ate without saying a word. Wan Hongling, who was next to her, did the same. Li Yundong knew that this was their rule: don't talk when eating, don't talk when sleeping. Seeing that Zi Yuan and Wan Hongling were unwilling to speak, Li Yundong didn't say anything either. They finished eating in silence at the dining table and cleaned up the table. Li Yundong saw that everyone was sitting on the sofa in the living room or sitting cross-legged on the carpet. After muting the TV, he said, "Zi Yuan, I've thought about what you asked me just now. Although I didn't expect that I would become the leader of the Fox Zen school before, now that I have become one, I will be a competent leader, whether from Su Chan's point of view or from my own point of view. The reputation of the Fox Zen school was not very good before, and I hope that it can be reversed in my hands." Zi Yuan bowed and praised, "Immeasurable longevity in happiness. Generally, this is really a great kindness that benefits the cultivation world." Li Yundong smiled and said, "Zi Yuan, don't always be so polite like Zhou Qin. I can't stand it if you're too polite." Zi Yuan smiled slightly and didn't say anything. Li Yundong pondered for a while. He looked at Zhou Qin and then at Zi Yuan and said, "Zhou Qin, you are my friend and my registered disciple. Zi Yuan, you are my teacher and my friend, so I won't hide it from you. The Fox Zen school is now an empty shell. Not only is it empty, but it also owes debts. Even the Taoist temple where the Fox Zen school is located is rented, and it will be taken back in a month. If you want to renew the lease, you have to rent it for 5 years at a time, which will cost more than 5 million yuan." Hearing this, Su Chan couldn't help grabbing Li Yundong's arm and saying in surprise, "So much? How can we have so much money?" Zhou Qin thought for a moment without batting an eyelid, then said, "I can gather 500,000 yuan. Li Yundong waved his hand and said, "No, because of me, my family's financial situation is not what it used to be. How can I take your money again? The reason why I called you here and told you about this is that you are my friend, my registered disciple, and one of the people closest to me." When Zhou Qin heard this, she couldn't help but be shocked. She felt sour and sweet at the same time, and all kinds of feelings welled up in her heart. For a moment, she was lost in thought, but she heard Li Yundong continue. You are very knowledgeable. I want to ask you to give me some advice and give me some ideas. Because I want to do something. In the living room, Su Chan, Zi Yuan, Wan Hongling, and Zhou Qin all asked in unison, what is it? Chapter 296. Go to Watch Network. Li Yundong pondered for a while and said carefully, I want to do some business related to traditional Chinese medicine. I've been thinking about this matter for the past few days. From the May 4th movement to the end of the Four Olds and the Cultural Revolution, our traditional culture has been destroyed beyond recognition. Although Western medicine is the mainstream now, when I was in the city hospital, I felt that there was still a market for our traditional Chinese medicine. Go to Kanwang. 7 K.O.M. At this point, Su Chan asked in a low voice, you want to open a clinic? You want to be Sun Simiao? Li Yundong couldn't help laughing. I can't be Sun Simiao. If I were to sit in the clinic all day long, would I still be able to cultivate? Zi Yuan nodded and said, that's true. Although there are 9 doctors out of 10, almost no cultivators are professional doctors. Whether it's Gu Hong of the Danding sect or Zhongli Quan and Lu Dongbin of the Jindan sect, although they have stories of practicing medicine to save the world, they are all coincidences. They are not professional doctors. At this time, Zhou Qin spoke. As soon as she opened her mouth, she said, Master. Li Yundong interrupted her. Why are you calling me that again? Zhou Qin smiled slightly and changed her words. Li Yundong, do you want to open your own hospital to promote traditional Chinese medicine? Li Yundong sighed. I want to, but where do I have the money and strength to do so? How much money would it cost to open a private hospital? What I want to do is to sell medicinal herbs, but I don't know how to get started, so I want to discuss it with you too. After Li Yundong finished speaking, Wan Hongling suddenly said, Gazao sect and other major external alchemy sects control many medicinal herb production bases and operating companies. If you want to do this, I'm afraid that you will become enemies with external alchemy. Li Yundong was stunned. No way. I do my own thing, and he does his. Why do you have to make things difficult for me? Because external alchemy relies on alchemy to run its own sect, the pills they refine can often be sold at sky-high prices in the black market of the cultivation world, so they refine pills and then sell them. This forms an industrial chain of external alchemy. The most primitive industrial chain is the production and control of various Chinese herbs. Among the people in this room, although Su Chan had heard a lot about the cultivation world from her master, she knew very little about external alchemy. Li Yundong had only cultivated for half a year, so he knew nothing about it, let alone Zhou Qin. Zhou Qin was listening attentively. She suddenly asked, what is external alchemy? Is it a sect that specializes in refining pills? Zi Yuan smiled slightly and explained, in terms of cultivation methods, the cultivation world is divided into the Niden sect and the external alchemy sect. In the Niden sect, our Zhengyi school is the leader, and there are sects such as the Jinshan sect and the Danding sect. In the external alchemy sect, the Gazao sect is the leader, and there are sects such as the Maoshan sect and the Qingwei sect. Watch Net. The Niden sect focuses on the human body's Niden, while the external alchemy focuses on taking elixirs. Hearing this, Zhou Qin suddenly understood, but her expression was still a little strange. Obviously, she had just come into contact with the world of cultivators and was a little uncomfortable. Zhou Qin looked at Li Yundong and asked, are you from the Niden sect or the external alchemy sect? This question stumped Li Yundong. He felt that he had officially started cultivating after taking the Renyuan Jindan, so he should be regarded as a member of the external alchemy sect. However, his Niden cultivation was extremely solid, so it seemed that he should also be regarded as a member of the Niden sect. Li Yundong thought for a while and became confused. Zi Yuan, who was beside him, helped him out with a smile. Li Yundong should be regarded as a member of the external alchemy sect. He is a master of both internal and external cultivation. After that, Wan Hongling suddenly snorted and said, if it weren't for the Renyuan Jindan and my sister Zi Yuan's 9-turn dew pill, how could you have improved so quickly? Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He looked at Zhou Qin, his eyes sparkling. He kept thinking to himself, if only I had another Renyuan Jindan. I could give it to Zhou Qin. It would be my way of repaying her for helping me destroy my family. However, Zi Yuan glanced at Wan Hongling faintly, and there was a hint of warning in her eyes. She said to Li Yunyang, I believe that you can also feel how helpful an external elixir is to your cultivation. From this, it can be seen that an immortal pill is a treasure that all cultivators yearn for. Precisely because external elixirs are so important and can bring about huge economic benefits, the sect controls precious alchemy techniques. Therefore, in order to control the profits of this industry, they must control the upstream of the industry chain, which is various kinds of precious Chinese medicinal herbs. Only by controlling this area would they have enough raw materials to refine all kinds of pills. Otherwise, if this business is controlled by others, then the external alchemy sect won't be far from annihilation. Li Yundong suddenly understood. I understand. The external alchemy regards this place as its own forbidden land and doesn't allow others to touch it, right? Zi Yuan nodded and said, that's true. Watch net. Because of this, the Niden sect and the external alchemy sect have fought several times in secret. A few months ago, the appearance of Renyuan Jindan caused a bloody storm in the cultivation world. Even the Fox Zen school was involved. When she said this, Zi Yuan gave Li Yundong a meaningful look. Su Chan and Wan Hongling both looked at Li Yundong with complicated expressions. Li Yundong smiled and said, why are you looking at me? Zi Yuan, you said so much. You just want to say that it's impossible to make Chinese medicinal herbs. It will cause a conflict with the external alchemy sect. Zi Yuan said, there is nothing in this world that is absolutely impossible. The key is whether you have enough strength. If the Fox Zen school is the most powerful sect in the world, then you can compete with the external alchemy sect for this business. But now that the Fox Zen school has suddenly changed, it is time to recuperate. If you suddenly intervene in this business, I'm afraid that you will get into trouble. Li Yundong sighed and said, if this doesn't work, then what can I do? Zhou Qin suddenly said, actually, I think Li Yundong, you can think about the problem in front of you from another perspective. Li Yundong turned to look at her and said, go ahead, I'm listening. Zhou Qin stroked her hair behind her ear and said with confidence, the biggest problem in front of us is the lack of money, right? Li Yundong nodded and said, yes, I have a headache when I think about the 5 million in a month. Zhou Qin couldn't help frowning. If you want to earn 5 million a month, it's hard for me to think of a good way, except for gambling or winning the lottery. But I do know a way to make money. Hearing this, Li Yundong urged with interest, what way? Zhou Qin said, do you remember the restaurant we went to eat French food last time? Li Yundong burst into laughter. He was just about to say something when his arms suddenly moved. Someone was poking him with a finger. Li Yundong turned around and saw Su Chan smiling sweetly at him. It was obvious that she had also remembered what had happened at the French restaurant last time. Li Yundong and Su Chan looked at each other and smiled, then turned their heads and said, of course I remember. Zhou Qin's eyes darkened, but soon returned to normal. She said, there are a few shops on that street for rent recently. I was wondering if you could start with a small shop first. After all, the initial investment is a little less. There is a lot of traffic on this street. As long as you choose the right way, I believe you will make a profit. Li Yundong thought for a moment and sighed. If you don't accumulate one step at a time, you won't be able to reach 1,000 miles. What you're talking about is the way of doing business. Think about it, how can you become fat in one go? Where can I find 5 million in a month? At this time, Ziyuan suddenly said, I probably understand your difficulties. Now you are very worried that you won't be able to pay for the rent of the Fox Zen School Taoist Temple next month, and you are also worried that you won't be able to support more than a dozen people in the Fox Zen School in the future, right? Li Yundong smiled bitterly and said, I feel really embarrassed that you put it so bluntly. Ziyuan smiled and said, it's okay, I'll lend it to you. 6 million, 5 million for the rent, and 1 million for the startup capital of your business. Is that enough? Li Yundong was stunned. You'll lend it to me? Do you have so much money? Wan Hongling shouted, Sister Ziyuan, this is all the savings of our Linggong sect. Ziyuan acted as if she hadn't heard her. She said lightly, this money is just sitting there. Now that the value of money is so high, it's better to take it out and give it to those who need it. Li Yundong thought for a moment and didn't argue. He slapped his thigh and said, okay, I'll pay you back 10% interest in the future. Ziyuan smiled slightly and turned to Wan Hongling. Go to my room and see how much money is left in my account. Then, bring me the checkbook. Wan Hongling pulled Ziyuan's arm in surprise. Sister Ziyuan. What will we eat in the future? Ziyuan smiled and said meaningfully, are you afraid that Jinrenli, who is famous all over the world, will renege on his debt? When Li Yundong heard this, all kinds of feelings welled up in his heart. He thought to himself, I don't know what kind of incense I burned in my previous life, but I got Su Chan's favor and companionship. Now I even have Zhou Qin and Ziyuan, these two beauties, to help me. I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to pay them back in this life. Wan Hongling stood up unhappily and glared at Li Yundong. Hey, give me your bank account number. Li Yundong didn't mind. He took out the credit card he carried with him and handed it over. Wan Hongling took the card, turned around, and jumped into her home from the balcony. Su Chan watched her leave and pulled Li Yundong worriedly. She whispered, Yundong, you borrowed so much money at once. How are you going to pay it back? Li Yundong pinched the little girl's nose lovingly. Don't worry. I'll take care of it. Su Chan shook her head and said, how can I not worry? In the past, when you owed the bank tens of thousands of yuan, we almost ended up on the streets. Now you owe millions. Li Yundong spread his hands and said to Ziyuan with a smile, Jinren Ziyuan, if I don't come forward, will your Linggong sect accept part-time workers who sweep the floor? Do you want me to sweep the floor every day to pay back the money? Ziyuan smiled and said, I can't afford to hire a leader of a sect to sweep the floor for our Linggong sect. Besides, with your reputation, isn't that a waste of talent? Li Yundong waved his hand and said with a smile, don't say that. If you really feel bad, you can raise my salary. Su Chan shouted from the side, if you sweep the floor, what will I do? Li Yundong laughed and said, what can you do with your thick hands and feet? Just don't make trouble. Su Chan stamped her feet and said angrily, you're so annoying. You look down on me. Li Yundong put his palms together and said with a smile, how dare I look down on you, Fox Fairy. Amitba. They were chatting and laughing in the room, but it wasn't long before Wan Hongling rushed in from the balcony and shouted, oh no, oh no. Sister Ziyuan, it's bad. Ziyuan's face darkened and she shouted, Hongling, as a cultivator, how can you lose your composure like this? Where is your cultivation? Is the sky falling down? Wan Hongling said with a pale face, Sister Ziyuan, the Zhengyi school has frozen our bank accounts. Ziyuan had always been calm, but when she suddenly heard this, her face suddenly changed and she cried out involuntarily, what? Chapter 297. Go to watch net. When Li Yundong heard the bad news, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. He tried to find joy in the bitterness and said to Zi Yuan, who was shocked, now, both of us are poor. I'll dismantle the Fox Zen school, and you dismantle the Lingong sect. Let's form a beggar gang. After saying that, he laughed out loud to amuse himself. Watch net. Color asterisk caret and text learn % super hashtag speed. Update. Wan Hongling glared at him from the side. You're actually gloating. Li Yundong spread his hands and said helplessly, should I cry? This is called sympathizing with each other. At this time, Zi Yuan came to her senses. She said to Wan Hongling with an ugly expression, have you confirmed it? Don't ever lie to me. Wan Hongling jumped up and said excitedly, Sister Zi Yuan, when have I ever lied to you? When have I ever disobeyed your words? Only then did Zi Yuan believe it. She looked serious and murmured to herself, so soon? Is the Jingyi school eager to annex our Lingong sect? Although her voice was low, Li Yundong heard it clearly. He asked, what's wrong? Isn't Jingyi school in the same sect as you? Why would he want to annex you? At this time, Zi Yuan's Taoist heart was in a mess, and she looked worried. She didn't answer Li Yundong's question for a while, but Wan Hongling said loudly, in theory, we are under the Jingyi school, but in fact, the Lingong sect is just a branch of the Jingyi school. Just like the Chuanjin sect has the Chuanjin Dragon sect, the Chuanjin Dragon sect has the Green Cave sect of the Dragon Gate, and the West Heart sect of the Dragon Gate. On the surface, this is a subordinate relationship, but in fact, they are all independent of each other. Humph, the Jingyi school has coveted our 3 great magic treasures for a long time. They have long wanted to annex our sect and take all the 3 great magic treasures. They went too far this time. They actually froze our assets. What right do they have to do that? The more Wan Hongling spoke, the angrier she got. No, I'm going to reason with them. With that, Wan Hongling stomped her feet and was about to leave, but Zi Yuan shouted, stop. Get back here. Wan Hongling said angrily, Sister Zi Yuan, last time they bullied us at the door. This time, they directly forced us into a dead end. How long are you going to endure and retreat? Zi Yuan sighed softly and said, if you go, how can you reason with them? You have to know that these are actually donations from pilgrims. Nominally, they belong to our Lingong sect, but in fact, Jingyi school also has the right to appropriate and manipulate them. Because these pilgrims go for the name of Jingyi school, there are very few who really donate for the name of Lingong sect. Watch net. At this time, Li Yundong heard some clues. He suddenly interrupted and said, you mean that the money you originally intended to lend me was actually donated by people who came to the Taoist temple to worship and burn incense? And the money actually belongs to both the Lingong sect and the Jingyi school. Now the Jingyi school has frozen your assets. Zi Yuan nodded. There was disdain and mockery in the corner of her mouth. This is the same as many corrupt officials donating to the temple. They just want to feel at ease. Some people want to ask for some prescriptions to cure diseases and calm the nerves, while others want to ask for the way of immortals. Therefore, they will donate money without hesitation. Our Taoist temple is open to all directions. The money originally came from the people, so it would be a waste if we don't take it. If there is a chance in the future, we can also use it for the people. Speaking of this, Zi Yuan sighed. It's a pity that it's frozen now. I can't help you. Wan Hongling said, Sister Zi Yuan, a while ago, wasn't there an official who kept pestering you to teach her cultivation? How about you go and beg him to help us unfreeze our accounts? Before Zi Yuan could speak, Li Yundong said flatly, no, if you ask for help, you will have to accept it. As the saying goes, if Zi Yuan goes to beg him, it will be a huge favor. At that time, she will be controlled by him, and he will definitely have all kinds of requests for Zi Yuan. This is something I absolutely don't want to see. Even if I, Li Yundong, take the Fox Zen school up and down the street to beg, I will never ask for a penny like this. His words were sonorous and powerful. Su Chan nodded hard, wrapped her arms around Li Yundong's arm, and nodded hard. Well, at worst, I'll go to the streets with you again. Li Yundong pretended to be angry and said, Scoundrel, when did I let you live on the streets? Su Chan giggled and said, I was just saying. Li Yundong glared at her and said, If I have no money, I will sell you and then open an open bidding. I will sell you to whoever offers the highest price. Su Chan suddenly became anxious and said angrily, No, you can't do this. Li Yundong laughed and rubbed the little girl's head dotingly. I was just saying. Su Chan pouted and covered the top of her head with her hand. She said unhappily, You should imitate me. Li Yundong and Su Chan laughed for a while, but the tense and depressing atmosphere in the room dissipated a lot. Go to the internet. 7 K.O.M. Zi Yuan looked at him with admiration and helplessness. I admire Zhenren Li's noble character and unquestionable integrity, but I can't help you now. How are you going to get through this crisis? Could it be that everyone in the Fox Zen school is going to beg on the streets? Li Yundong sighed, his face gloomy. Half a year ago, he had been a clueless otaku, and his major had been useless. Raising a vixen like Su Chan at home had caused him to go bankrupt and be saddled with debt. Now, he had to raise a group of vixens. It was a huge headache. Li Yundong thought for a while, then suddenly slapped the table and shouted, I have an idea. His shout startled Wan Hongling and Su Chan, but Zhou Qin and Zi Yuan's eyes lit up at the same time and they asked, What is it? Li Yundong waved his hand and said, At worst, I'll take the Fox Zen school to form a dance troupe and tour the country. As he said this, he pointed at Zhou Qin and said, You, be the receptionist. He pointed at Su Chan and said, You, be the announcer. As he said this, he pointed at Wan Hongling and said, Anyway, you have no money. Why don't you join me? You are good looking. You will be in charge of collecting money at the front desk. Finally, he pointed at Zi Yuan and said, Zi Yuan has the temperament of a big sister. Okay, you will be the foreman. As Li Yundong said this, Su Chan and Wan Hongling both burst out laughing. Zhou Qin's cold face couldn't help but show a smile, and her cheeks moved. Zi Yuan smiled. She knew that Li Yundong was joking, so she asked, Then what will you do? Be a big boss and a capitalist who enjoys the fruits of others' labor. Li Yundong patted his chest and said loudly, I will perform breaking stones with my chest. This is my specialty. Before he could finish his words, everyone in the room burst out laughing. Zhou Qin thought of Li Yundong's performance last semester and couldn't help giggling. After laughing for a while, she covered her mouth with her hand, turned around, and moved her shoulders. Su Chan laughed the most and burrowed into Li Yundong's arms. She couldn't even straighten her back, and her eyes turned into crescent moons. She was filled with emotion and admiration in her heart. My master not only has a high cultivation quotient, but he is also talented. What's more, he is so optimistic and humorous even in such a difficult situation. How can I not love him? After the group of poor people laughed for a while, Zhou Qin finally held back her laughter and said, Let's get back to business. Since we can't solve it for the time being, we might as well make some preparations. Li Yundong looked at her and saw that although her face was cold, there was still a trace of a smile at the corner of her eyes. She was like a red stamen of a wintersweet in the cold winter, charming and moving. His heart skipped a beat, and he quickly restrained himself and asked, What preparations? Zhou Qin said, Since we can't come up with so much money for the time being, let's put the lease of the Fox Zen school aside for the time being. Anyway, there is still a month left. But we can't not do what we can do in front of us just because we can't come up with the lease money. Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat. I understand what you mean. You mean that we still have to open the shop. At least we have to open a way to make money, and then we can find another way to find the least money. Is that what you mean? Zhou Qin smiled and nodded. That's exactly what I mean. Although my family's financial situation has collapsed, I still have a little savings. I can also sell my car and get 500,000 yuan, which should be enough for your startup capital. Moreover, once your shop is up and running, you can use the storefront as collateral to get a loan from the bank. Then, you can discuss with the Taoist temple's landlord to see if you can pay in installments. Perhaps the problem will be solved. Li Yundong couldn't help but praise, a rich family is indeed a rich family. Zhou Qin, your words are worth 10,000 of our nonsense here. You have pointed out a good way. Not bad, not bad. Let's do that. However, you can't pay for this. I already owe you too much. I can't use your money anymore. Zhou Qin said seriously, since I have entered the school and become your disciple, this money can be my entrance fee and apprenticeship fee. Li Yundong was unwilling. He shook his head and said, no, absolutely not. It's not that I don't want to accept your kindness, but I haven't officially accepted you as a disciple yet. If I accept such a heavy gift, it will be bad for my reputation in the future. Moreover, I heard that the Fox Zen School has an industry. I want to see what it is first. If I can find a way to turn this industry into money, maybe I can get through the current difficulties. Li Yundong said kindly to Zhou Qin, don't use your money for now. If I really have no other way, I will ask you for help. Is that okay? Zhou Qin sighed slightly in her heart, but she nodded with a smile on her face. At this time, Wan Hongling suddenly asked, I've been listening to you for a long time, and I've been thinking about a problem. Li Yundong asked, what problem? Wan Hongling asked in confusion, why do you have to rent that piece of land? The Fox Zen School has been severely damaged, and its location has been exposed to all the cultivation sects in the world. Why not move to another place? Li Yundong pondered for a while. He raised his head and looked at Wan Hongling, then turned to Zi Yuan and said, I'm going back to the Fox Zen School. Why don't you come back with me? I will tell you why I want to guard the mountain where the Fox Zen School is located. Moreover, since I started cultivating, I have received a lot of kindness from you. I haven't been able to find a chance to repay you. Now that I think about it, I shouldn't keep it to myself. Zi Yuan thought for a moment and said, it's not impossible for me to go back to the Fox Zen School with you, but it has to be at night. Otherwise, it won't be a good thing if some cultivators see me going in and out of the Fox Zen School alone during the day. Wan Hongling curled her lips and muttered in her heart, you went to find him as soon as you went down the mountain, and you even did this kind of thing. It's really unnecessary. Li Yundong nodded and said with a smile, well, let's go back together in the evening. Su Chan clapped her hands and praised him, saying with a smile, okay, okay. They waited until late at night. Before leaving, Li Yundong thought for a moment and said to Zi Yuan, Wan Hongling, and Su Chan, Zhou Qin can't fly. You go first. I'll take her and fly slowly. Don't wait for me on the way. Zi Yuan and Wan Hongling nodded and turned into two beams of cyan light. Su Chan knew that since Li Yundong had accepted Zhou Qin as his disciple, he would definitely pass on the way to her. The little girl took Li Yundong's hand and said softly, then I'll wait for you at the school. After that, she looked at Li Yundong reluctantly, then turned into a beam of cyan light and left. Although it was not the first time that Zhou Qin had seen such magical magic as Zi Yuan and Su Chan, she still couldn't suppress the violent beating of her heart at this time. It was just like when Li Yundong had seen the door of an unknown world open to him. She felt excited and nervous. Although Li Yundong was gentle and approachable, he was surprisingly serious and cold at this time. He stood on the balcony, and the bright moonlight fell from the sky. It was like a top light on the stage hitting him, covering his body with a faint white halo. His figure was like a deep pool and a mountain, awe-inspiring and inviolable. At this moment, Li Yundong was like a strict teacher examining his students. Li Yundong reached out a hand to Zhou Qin and asked in a deep voice, "Do you want to see the real cultivation world? Give me your hand." Zhou Qin reached out. Her hand hesitated in mid-air, but soon she firmly placed it in Li Yundong's broad and gentle palm, //7854627895541. Chapter 298. Go to Watch Network. Li Yundong held Zhou Qin's soft hand, and all the jinqi in his body rushed out. Not only did it wrap around him, but it also wrapped around Zhou Qin. The two of them floated in the air. Go to Kanban. 7:KOM/OM/Zhou Qin's eyes suddenly widened. Before she could react, her body felt light and she was taken out of the balcony by Li Yundong. In less than a few seconds, they flew out of Hongqing New area. The first time Li Yundong had been taken flying by Su Chan, she had asked him to close his eyes. That was because Su Chan's jinqi was not enough and her cultivation was limited. She couldn't fly with him when he couldn't control the qi in his body. Li Yundong thought that his jinqi was strong enough that he could easily control a large copper tripod that weighed thousands of kilograms, let alone Zhou Qin, a slim woman who weighed less than 50 kilograms. Therefore, Li Yundong didn't ask Zhou Qin to close her eyes. Instead, he carefully observed her reaction and expression after flying into the air. Zhou Qin was in the air, and she felt an inexplicable force wrap around her whole body and support her. At first, she was a little nervous and trembled slightly, but after a while, she calmed down and looked at the world under her feet curiously and excitedly with her beautiful eyes. Li Yundong saw that she was born with a big heart and a firm will. She was indeed a good material for cultivation. He nodded in his heart and said, "Do you see that? This is the world of cultivators." Zhou Qin's understanding was extremely high. She thought of something and said, "You mean that the world of cultivators is higher than all living beings, but it can't be separated from all living beings?" Li Yundong looked at her with appreciation and said, "All the women in the world should be jealous of you. You are both beautiful and intelligent. God loves you so much." Zhou Qin smiled slightly, but she thought in her heart, "But I think Su Chan is the woman who should be jealous of the most in the world." Li Yundong didn't know what Zhou Qin was thinking. He said, "You're right. The world of cultivators is indeed like this. The people who lived in this world were often busy with scheming and fighting for power, or with daily necessities. They often did not look up at the sky above their heads. And it's the same for us cultivators. We live in this world and are affected and restricted by it. At the same time, we are constantly trying to get out of this world." Speaking of this, Li Yundong said with some emotion, "Half a year ago, I was just like you. I never thought that there would be cultivators in the world around me. Those people and things that only exist in movies turned out to be real. I remember that Zi Yuan once said, 'The great way is invisible, and the great sound is silent.'" Watch net. 7:KOM/The true Tao is right under our feet. It's just that we usually don't pay attention to it. It's the same in the cultivation world. Li Yundong stared at Zhou Qin with bright eyes and asked very seriously, "Zhou Qin, have you thought it through today? Do you really want to cultivate?" Zhou Qin was born into a family of officials, and she was born with a subconscious yearning for power and power. However, she was rebellious by nature and was very disgusted with the restrictions of officialdom. Therefore, she had inadvertently discovered Li Yundong's abnormality and strange power, and thus had a strong curiosity about him. Zhou Qin hated the restrictions of the secular world, but she also admired the strong. That was why she had approached Li Yundong step by step, almost destroyed her family, and finally entered the cultivation world. In the face of Li Yundong's question, Zhou Qin took a deep breath. In the past, she had only wanted to stay by Li Yundong's side and look at him more and talk to him more. Zhou Qin would be very satisfied. But now, for the first time, Zhou Qin felt that she was so curious and eager about cultivation. This desire came from her natural worship and yearning for power, as well as her deep love for Li Yundong and her unswerving desire to follow him. Zhou Qin said solemnly, "I want to cultivate." Li Yundong nodded. "Although I haven't been cultivating for a long time, I will teach you everything I have learned. I hope that in the future, there will be one more famous female cultivator in the cultivation world." After that, he smiled and continued to fly in the direction of Dongwu City with Zhou Qin. Although Li Yundong's Jinqi was magnificent and he could fly with extremely heavy things, his flying speed was far inferior to that of Zi Yuan and the others. It was not until dawn that he took Zhou Qin back to the Fox Zen school. Before he could land, he saw Su Chan, Zi Yuan, and Ruan Hongling, who had been waiting for a long time, coming up to greet him. Ruan Hongling said sarcastically, "I can't imagine that such a powerful cultivator like you can't even fly with Yin spirit. You can only fly with your physical body. Don't you know that among the 3 ways of flying, physical flight is the slowest?" Li Yundong asked curiously, "Oh. Which 3? Ruan Hongling rolled her eyes at him and muttered, "Are you kidding me? This kind of guy doesn't even know the 3 ways of flying, but he's so good at fighting. Is there any justice in this world?" Zi Yuan, who was standing to one side, said with a smile, "The 3 ways of flying are physical flight, Yin spirit or Yang spirit flight, and flying on a magic item. Go to the internet. You can already do the first one. The second one needs to be cultivated to the 6th heaven of Huanying before you can do it. The third one needs a special magic item, such as the Bahuang sword and the Bajie sword. The Yin spirit or the Yang spirit controls the magic item, and then the magic item takes you to fly." Among the 3, the first method consumes the most Jinqi and is the slowest, but it carries the highest load. The second method is the fastest, but it also consumes Jinqi. The third method is only a little slower than the second, but it consumes the least Jinqi. Li Yundong nodded and said to Zi Yuan with a smile, "Thank you for your teaching, Jinren Zi Yuan. Now come with me. I'll tell you why the Fox Zen school can't leave Mount Tianlong." As he spoke, he led the group to the secret entrance of the back mountain of the Fox Zen school. Then, he pushed aside the bushes and walked in. When Zi Yuan saw that there was a secret cave in the Fox Zen school, she didn't think it was strange. But when they entered the secret cave, passed through the tunnel, walked into the stone room, lit the candlesticks on the wall, and looked around, they were suddenly moved. Ruan Hongling's eyes widened and she cried out involuntarily, "Heavenly Jindan technique." This was a cultivation technique that had been lost for generations. "No wonder you were so powerful in the last fight. Sister Zi Yuan said that you might have cultivated the Heavenly Jindan technique. It turns out to be true." However, Zi Yuan said with a shocked expression, "I didn't expect this to be the work of the mystical silver fox." Only then did Ruan Hongling react. Her eyes fell on the last inscription and she took a deep breath. "I was wondering which great cultivator could carve words on such hard granite with his bare hands. It turns out that it's the 9-tailed fox. Oh my God, if the cultivators of other sects find out about this, I'm afraid there will be another bloody battle." Zi Yuan calmed down. She walked to the wall and touched it with her hand. She shook her head and said, "She can actually carve so many words on such a hard stone surface. Moreover, judging from the situation of the handwriting, they were all carved in one breath. The cultivation of the mystical silver fox is really terrible. We can't catch up with her. No wonder she was invincible in the world back then." Su Chan said proudly, "Of course, the mystical silver fox is the most powerful master in the history of our Fox Zen school." Ruan Hongling retorted sarcastically, "She's also the most notorious master." Su Chan was so angry that she stamped her feet. You! Seeing that the two of them were about to bicker, Li Jiandong immediately interrupted, okay, don't be so ungrateful. You went into the treasure mountain and came back empty-handed. Seeing such an important cultivation magic, you still don't think about it. You still have time to bicker. I really admire you. Su Chan and Wan Hongling looked at each other and turned their heads away with a snort. Li Jiandong smiled and said to Zi Yuan, how about it? How much is the heavenly Jindan technique worth? 50 million yuan. Zi Yuan sighed and said, this is a priceless secret manual. It's a pity that it can't be sold. Otherwise, you would have become rich overnight. Li Jiandong smiled and said, yes, I also know that, so I can only tell you. This heavenly Jindan technique can be regarded as a gift from me to you. How about it? Before Zi Yuan could speak, Wan Hongling rushed to say, you're offering Buddha with borrowed flowers. You're so shameless. You don't have any sincerity at all. Li Jiandong didn't take it seriously and laughed. Zi Yuan said with a smile, your gift is too heavy. I can't afford it. Wan Hongling said, no, Sister Zi Yuan, for him. Before she could finish, Zi Yuan suddenly shouted, Hongling. Wan Hongling was so scared that she shrank back and swallowed the rest of her words. Li Jiandong was stunned and asked, what's wrong? Is there something I don't know? Zi Yuan said lightly, it's nothing. But today, I happened to see the heavenly Jindan technique. Generally, do you want to try the feeling of wandering the world? Li Jiandong asked, what is wandering the world? Zi Yuan said, it's when the yin spirit or the yang spirit travels. Li Jiandong's heart skipped a beat. He knew that Zi Yuan was using a different method to guide his cultivation. He thought for a moment and said with a smile, well, the last time I practiced the heavenly Jindan technique, I felt that my Naiden seemed to have turned into a small person and then jumped out of my body. However, this feeling didn't last long before it disappeared. Su Chan's eyes widened and she said in surprise, Yundong, you've entered the 6th level of Huanying phase. Zi Yuan also nodded and said, with your cultivation, it's reasonable for you to break through the 5th level of Huanying phase and enter the 6th level of Huanying phase. The thing that jumped out of your body before was your yin spirit. The primary stage of the Huanying phase is the yin spirit leaving the body. When you slowly cultivate the yin spirit in your body to the Yuanying phase, the yin spirit will automatically become the yang spirit. At that time, even if your body is destroyed, you can escape with your life. Li Jiandong was greatly moved when he heard this and was eager to give it a try. Why don't I try again and see if my yin spirit can go out? Zi Yuan smiled and nodded. Okay, that's what I was thinking. Then, she turned to Wan Hongling and said, the heavenly Jindan technique is a rare Taoist treasure. You can cultivate here and help me and Li Jiandong protect our bodies. Li Jiandong also told Su Chan to teach Zhou Qin the most basic cultivation methods, and then he sat down cross-legged in the stone cave. Due to the guidance of Zi Yuan's powerful yin qi, the Naiden in Li Jiandong's body quickly turned into a nascent soul and flew out of his body. At this time, Wan Hongling, Su Chan, and Zhou Qin had not yet entered meditation. They were all looking at the yin spirit and yang spirit of Li Jiandong and Zi Yuan. Zi Yuan had already cultivated to the highest Yuanying phase of the 6th level of Huanying phase and could use the yang spirit. Li Jiandong had just started cultivating in the 6th level of Huanying phase and could only use his yin spirit. Moreover, his yin spirit was relatively young and looked like a child about 10 years old. From his appearance, one could vaguely recognize that it was Li Jiandong. When Zhou Qin saw this scene, she couldn't help but widen her eyes. She didn't even dare to breathe. She thought to herself, will I be able to cultivate to their level one day? When Su Chan and Wan Hongling saw Li Jiandong's yin spirit fly out with Zi Yuan's yang spirit, they couldn't help but feel envious and sigh. One Hongling thought to herself, when I first met Li Jiandong, he was just a beginner cultivator. His aura was strong, but now, in less than half a year of cultivation, he has reached the 6th level of Huanying phase. His fighting methods are even more powerful. Even Sister Zi Yuan, who has cultivated to the highest level of the 6th level of Huanying phase, is no match for him. His cultivation progress is so fast. If I don't work hard, I'm afraid I won't be able to catch up with him in this life. Su Chan thought to herself, when Yundong first started cultivating, he was far from being a match for me. Now, even 10 of me are no match for him. I have to work hard to cultivate and can't let him leave me behind too much. Otherwise, I can't be with him in the future, //7854627895541. Chapter 299. Go to watch net. After Li Yundong and Zi Yuan went on a mental journey, one Yin spirit and the other Yang spirit floated in the air. Li Yundong felt that he was as light as a feather. With a thought, he could fly thousands of meters away. The speed was far faster than when he was flying with his own body. Go to watch net. 7KOM/OM/Zi Yuan's Yang spirit was no different from her body, and even the clothes on her body were exactly the same. It was as if one person had been split into two. After watching Li Yundong travel freely in the air for a while, she suddenly asked, "Do you know what the biggest difference between the Yin spirit and the Yang spirit is?" At this time, Li Yundong stopped. He shook his head and said with a smile, "Although I seem to be very good at fighting now, in fact, I'm still far behind in cultivation. Junren Zi Yuan, don't keep me guessing. Please give me some advice." Zi Yuan smiled and waved at Li Yundong. "Come with me." The two of them quickly flew to the ground. It was late at night, and they had flown to the suburbs. They were almost in the wilderness, so they were not afraid of being seen. After Zi Yuan landed on the ground, she broke a branch with her hand and played with it in her hand. She smiled and said, "Try it." Li Yundong smiled and said, "What's so difficult about it?" As he spoke, he reached out to break the branch in front of him, but as soon as his hand touched the branch, he found that his hand had gone through it. Li Yundong was stunned and said in surprise, "I can't touch anything." Zi Yuan nodded and said with a smile, "That's right. This is the biggest difference between the Yin spirit and the Yang spirit." Li Yundong smiled and said, "Isn't the Yin spirit traveling very much like a person's soul leaving their body?" Zi Yuan said, "You can say that. I used to explain to you what the cultivation of the 5th heaven is about. Today, I will explain to you the cultivation of the 6th heaven of Yuanying." Li Yundong's face was full of seriousness. He formed a palm with one hand and said, "Please enlighten me, Junren Zi Yuan." Zi Yuan was playing with a branch picked from the roadside in her hand. She smiled and said, "When a cultivator cultivates to a certain level in the 5th heaven of Shentong, God will begin to prepare the heavenly tribulation, preparing to kill this cultivator. According to the normal rules of cultivation, if a heavenly thunder were to strike someone, regardless of whether they were a perfected golden immortal or a supreme immortal of the 9 heavens, they would definitely die. Watch net. Because no matter how strong the human body is, it is impossible to be stronger than the heavenly thunder. There is only one kind that can withstand the might of the heavenly thunder." Before Zi Yuan could finish speaking, Li Yundong's eyes lit up and he said, "I know, it's the Yin spirit or Yang spirit of a person who has gone out. It is the energy body formed by the Niden in your body. However, this energy body is relatively thin and weak, so it can't touch anything. If you use your Yin spirit to touch the heavenly tribulation, then what awaits you will definitely be your Yin spirit being destroyed. From then on, you will become a walking corpse. Only by cultivating the Yin spirit to the Yang spirit realm, this energy body will become vigorous and condensed, and you will be able to withstand the heavenly thunder. You should know that when you really transcend the heavenly thunder tribulation, you have to put your yang spirit in the dark clouds of rolling thunder and lightning and bear countless thunder and lightning. This is called transcending the heavenly tribulation. The primary realm of the sixth heaven is called yuanying. As the name implies, the Niden in your body turns into a baby. You said that when you cultivated the 9 cycles Jin Dan, your Yin spirit went out of your body. At that moment, the Yin spirit in your body, which had just turned into a baby, went out of your body to see the world. Your current Yin spirit has grown into the appearance of a teenager. This is the intermediate realm of the sixth heaven. Yuanying means that the Yin spirit in your body has begun to slowly take shape. When you slowly cultivate your Yin spirit to become more and more powerful, it will slowly transform into a Yang spirit, which means that your energy will become more and more powerful and condensed. You will be able to touch other things and be no different from ordinary people. This means that you have cultivated to the advanced realm of the sixth heaven, yuanying, which is also the Yang spirit realm. Although you are better than me in a fight, if we really fight to the death and I release my Yang spirit, it will immediately become a situation of 2 against 1. 1-on-1, I am no match for you, but 2 against 1, you are definitely no match for me. At the very least, even if it's 2 against 1, I can't beat you. I can also escape with my Yang spirit, find a corner that you can't find at all to hide in, slowly find a good tripod furnace, and then bear the humiliation and try to make a comeback. Just like Yan Fang, she may not be a match for Lu Yi in a fight, but when her Yang spirit escapes, all the cultivators on the field, including Lu Yi, can't stop her at the same time. Those who cultivate to the yuanying realm have already gotten rid of life and death and reincarnation. As long as the Yang spirit doesn't die, he can continue to live. He only needs to be reborn. This is the power of the highest realm of yuanying. Hearing this, Li Yundong suddenly understood. Ah, it turns out that you still had a trick up your sleeve in the last fight. Cunning, you are really cunning. I must really compare notes with you another day. Zi Yuan smiled slightly. There's no need to compare notes. Without the Yang spirit, if it's 2 against 1, your Jinqi is so powerful that I'm no match for you. I admit defeat. But I can't beat you, and you can't destroy me because you haven't cultivated to the highest realm of yuanying. If you meet a great cultivator at the supreme power level, you can't beat him, but you can't escape with your Yang spirit. If that happens, you won't be able to answer even if you cry for help. Li Yunyang smiled and said, I see. After reaching the Yangshan phase in the sixth heaven, not only can I add a doppelganger to participate in the attack, but I can also give up my physical body and escape with the Yang spirit to escape from the enemy's pursuit when necessary. Zi Yuan smiled and said, exactly. Li Yundong asked in confusion, now that you have cultivated the Yang spirit, can't you go through the heavenly tribulation? Zi Yuan shook her head and said, no, after cultivators cultivate to the Yang spirit phase, they are only free from the cycle of life and death, but they are not free from the control of heaven and earth. They must cultivate their Yang spirit to the 7th level of Jinshan before they can face the heavenly thunder. Otherwise, no matter how strong and condensed the Yang spirit is, it is impossible for them to withstand the power of the heavenly thunder. Li Yundong exclaimed and said, I remember. Last time when the Fox Zen school was fighting with the major sects, I heard some cultivators from other sects say that no one in the world can cultivate to the Jinshan phase. Zi Yuan nodded and then shook her head. Judging from the current cultivation world, that is indeed the case. However, the 6 great sects, Jingyi school, North and South Zen sect, Huayan sect, and other Buddhist cultivation sects have deep roots in hidden dragons and crouching tigers. It is hard to say if there are any seniors who have cultivated for many years who have reached this realm. However, as far as I know, Zhang Tianshishi, the leader of Jingyi school, seems to be close to this realm. Li Yundong thought for a moment and asked, I seem to have heard that only by taking the Dun Jin Dan can one cultivate to this realm. Zi Yuan laughed and said, this is only in theory. There are 3 great elixirs in the world, the Tianyuan Fairy Pill, the Dun Jin Dan, and the Renyuan Jin Dan. You took the Renyuan Jin Dan, which is ranked last, and immediately became a famous cultivator in the world. If you take the Dun Jin Dan, what kind of realm do you think you will reach? Hearing this, Li Yundong couldn't help but be fascinated. I don't know how to refine the Dun Jin Dan. Zi Yuan said, the cultivation method of the Dun Jin Dan has been lost for nearly 500 years. You'd better not think about it. It's better to cultivate step by step. It's better to wear a stone dripping with water. Li Yundong nodded in agreement. While the 2 of them were talking happily, they suddenly heard a faint shout coming from not far away. Excuse me, is that Li Yundong, Jinren? Li Yundong and Zi Yuan were shocked. They turned to face the direction of the voice at the same time and shouted warily, who is it? Li Yundong took a closer look and saw a woman in a long yellow gown standing in the dark night. This woman was beautiful, slender, exquisite, and elegant. If this woman was in normal times, she would be a charming great beauty. But at this time, it was dark and they were in the wilderness. It was obviously not normal for such a beauty to appear here. Zi Yuan's eyes were like torches, and she saw through the woman's true appearance at a glance. She whispered to Li Yundong, this is a Yin spirit traveling, and the demon qi on her is very strong. Li Yundong shouted coldly, who are you? How do you know me? Although Li Yundong's Yin spirit was traveling, the yang qi on his body was still extremely strong. The woman in yellow didn't dare to approach him from a distance. When she was about 5 meters away from Li Yundong, she said faintly, Jinren, you once saved my husband and my life. Have you forgotten? Li Yundong was suddenly confused. When did I save you and your husband? The woman in yellow looked at Zi Yuan, her eyes full of vigilance, and said softly, in the West Garden. Li Yundong suddenly understood. Could this be the 2 golden snakes that had been released? Li Yundong looked at her with a face full of doubt and asked, why are you looking for me? Aren't you afraid that I'll take you back? Next to me is Jinren Zi Yuan of the Lingong sect. She is my good friend. If you have something to say, just say it. There's no need to avoid it. The woman in yellow sighed softly and said with tears in her eyes, my husband and I were originally 2 golden snakes cultivating at the foot of Mount Donghua. A few days ago, my husband heard that the immortal pen and the medicine king tripod were about to be born, so he was moved and said that he wanted to go to the secular world to have a look. I tried hard to persuade him, but he didn't listen, so I had to follow him out of the mountain. But I didn't expect that when we passed through Dongwu City, we would be caught by the bald donkeys of Shiyuan Temple. They insisted that we were evildoers and wanted to force us. Heaven above, my husband and I have been cultivating hard in the mountains for 100 years and have never harmed a human life. I didn't expect that we would suffer such a disaster. Fortunately, Jinren saved us, so we were able to escape. Speaking of this, the woman in yellow bowed down. Li Yundong raised his hand and said, since you have escaped, why did you come to me again? I was just lucky that day. I didn't mean to save you. You don't have to thank me. The yellow-clothed woman sobbed and said, although we escaped from the tiger's mouth, we couldn't escape from the wolf's claws. These days, we have been besieged by cultivators from several cultivation sections. The new guests tried to rob us of our Naiden. In desperation, I remembered that only Jinren had once saved us in the mortal world, and I heard that Jinren had saved the Fox Zen school from destruction. What's more, Jinren doesn't discriminate against monsters like us who cultivate with demon bodies. That's why I boldly came here with my Yin spirit to ask for help. Li Yundong asked in a deep voice, how did you find me? The woman in yellow said, I have been wandering around the Fox Zen school until I saw Jinren Li's aura appear nearby, so I followed. Li Yundong didn't comment and asked again, you want me to save you? But how do I know if you've done anything outrageous? The woman in yellow cried and said, as the saying goes, God has the virtue of cherishing life. My husband and I have never done anything evil. If we have, I hope God will strike us with lightning. Whether it was Buddhism or Taoism, they all believed in karma, so when the woman in yellow made such an oath, Li Yundong believed her a little. However, Zi Yuan said in a low voice, Li Yundong, it's not that I'm long-winded and pedantic. After all, humans and demons are different. As the saying goes, those who are not of the same race must have different hearts. Not all demons are as innocent and harmless as Su Chan. You have to be careful before making a decision. Zi Yuan's words made Li Yundong hesitate again. For a moment, he was in a dilemma. To save or not to save? This was a question worth considering. // 785462789541. Chapter 300. Go to watch net. The yellow-clothed woman saw that Li Yundong was moved at first, but after Zi Yuan's words, he hesitated again. She cried and said, I heard that Jinren Li is a broad-minded and kind-hearted cultivator, so I took the risk to come here to ask for help. I didn't expect that Jinren Li would be like other cultivators. He would rather sit back and watch us, the monsters who have never done anything bad, be bullied and humiliated, and let those of his kind who are full of evil do evil. Go to watch net. 7 KOM. This sentence suddenly moved Li Yundong. He suddenly remembered what he had said when he had met Dorji Tenzin in the kingdom of Tibet. In fact, the most terrible thing in this world is not the demon, nor is it the devil, but the human beings. When people do evil, they are 100 times more vicious than the demons. Therefore, if the demons do good, not only will I not subdue them, but I will also protect them. If the world does evil, not only will I not protect them, but I will also enforce justice on behalf of heaven. Thinking of this, Li Yundong no longer hesitated. He said, you don't have to provoke me with words. Lead the way, and I'll come later. The woman in yellow was overjoyed. She choked with sobs and bowed down. Thank you for saving my life again, Jinren Li. Li Yundong waved his hand and said, you don't have to thank me so early. If what you said is true, I might have to take care of it. But if you tell a lie, maybe you will attract death yourself. The woman in yellow sighed and said, whether it's true or not, Jinren Li will know when you go. As she said this, her body turned into a yellow light and flew into the air, but she stayed still. Obviously, she was waiting for Li Yundong. Li Yundong turned to look at Zi Yuan and said, this matter started because of me. I thought that Su Chan was trapped in Shiyuan Temple, so I broke in. As a result, I accidentally released these 2 snake demons. If they are really evil monsters, I have the responsibility to catch them again. If they are really innocent and kind people, then I can't tolerate some cultivators with ulterior motives attacking them. Go back to the secret room of the cave and wait for me. I'll be back soon. Zi Yuan sighed and said, you are really too righteous. You really don't look like a cultivator with a pure heart and few desires. Forget it, I will accompany you once. You have just entered the 6th stage of heaven and your Yin spirit is still very weak. If someone uses a spell to attack you, you will be easily killed. Let's go, we can take care of each other. Li Yundong was overjoyed. He chuckled and said, I think you are the one who is cold-faced and warm-hearted. You talk tough, but your heart is softer than anyone else. Zi Yuan smiled and said, let's go. The 2 of them quickly transformed into a streak of cyan light and flew into the sky. Seeing the 2 of them follow, the yellow-clothed woman quickly flew north. In the blink of an eye, they could fly dozens of miles. In less than half an hour, Li Yunyang and Zi Yuan followed the yellow-clothed woman to the ground of Xinbin. They saw that the place where they landed was a jungle deep in the mountains, and there were houses hidden at the foot of the mountain. "Watch net." The yellow-clothed woman said, "The bodies of my husband and I are hidden in this mountain. Those cultivators who surrounded us are on the other side of the mountain. Please uphold justice, Jinren Li." With that, she burrowed into the mountain and disappeared without a trace. Li Yundong frowned and flew to the top of the mountain. Sure enough, he saw torches on the other side of the mountain and faint voices of people. Zi Yuan, who had followed him up the mountain, couldn't help but frown slightly. It seems to be cultivators from the 6 great sects. Li Yundong said in a deep voice, "Let's go and have a look." Zi Yuan nodded. The two of them restrained their auras and explored the foot of the mountain. When they were more than 20 meters away, they heard clear voices. "Do these 2 stinky snakes think that we can't do anything to them if they hide in the hole? The people of the Jinshan sect have been in there for 2 hours. Why haven't we seen any movement yet? Ha ha ha, isn't the Jinshan sect good at the earth escape technique? I'm afraid that this time they will directly escape into the snake's stomach. ****, what are you Donghua sect gloating about? If you have the ability, you can do it yourself." This group of people was noisy, but they heard an old voice in the crowd. Li Yundong looked through the cover of the dense forest and saw Jing Yuan of the Yin Yang sect of Mount Wuhua standing among the crowd, stroking his beard. Next to him was a tall and beautiful girl who was sleeping. It was Ding Nan. As soon as Li Yundong saw Jing Yuan, he immediately said angrily in a low voice, "This bastard stole Mo Ashi's threaded hairpin of soul traversal from the Fox Zen school under my nose. I'll get it back from him." Zi Yuan advised, "Don't get excited. Listen to what they have to say." Li Yundong suppressed his anger and listened carefully to what Jing Yuan was saying. Jing Yuan said, "Fellow Taoists, please calm down and listen to me." Some of the cultivators from the small sects around said, "Senior Zheng, you should uphold justice." "That's right, Senior Zheng. You found the traces of these 2 snake demons, so you should be the one in charge." The cultivators of the 6 great sects, who had heard the news, shouted one after another, "When did the Yin Yang sect of Mount Wuhua become the master here? Our 6 great sects haven't spoken yet. The Yin Yang sect of Mount Wuhua should stand aside." "That's right, Senior Zheng, you'd better stand aside and rest. Let's see how our 6 great sects will show off." Jing Yuan heard the noise around him, but he was not angry. He still said in a clear voice, "Fellow Taoists, if we make a racket here, even if we quarrel until the next morning, we won't be able to get anything out of it. Let's go to the internet. 7 KOM. Color, text. Learn, net. Super_speed. More. Why don't we work together and kill these 2 stinky snakes first? It won't be too late to quarrel after that." His words made the other cultivators nod and say, "That makes sense. Let's deal with these 2 stinky snakes first." "That's right. You 6 great sects quarrel all day long and don't respect each other. Are you waiting for you to show off your skills? Forget it. It's good enough that you don't undermine each other. Bastard, which sect are you from? How dare you sow discord?" Li Yundong saw that there were at least 40 to 50 cultivators surrounding the foot of the mountain, and most of them were cultivators from various sects who had participated in the siege of the Fox Zen school. He sneered in his heart and said in a low voice, "Are these guys all here to subdue demons and enforce justice on behalf of heaven? I'm afraid that there are more people who want to take advantage of the situation and steal things." Zi Yuan said lightly, "It's normal for the 6 great sects to have a mix of good and bad. Moreover, these 2 golden snakes are full of treasures. They walk in the secular world and arouse the greed and coveting of cultivators. This is not surprising." Li Yundong sneered. He looked around and said in a low voice, "There are 40 to 50 people here, and there are at least 7 or 8 good cultivators. Jing Yuan is not easy to deal with. I don't think we can defeat them unless we add in the 2 golden snakes." Zi Yuan immediately shook her head and said, "No. Even if you can drive them away like this, in the future, you will definitely be accused of colluding with evildoers and becoming enemies of the 6 great sects. At that time, the 6 great sects will send out all their elites to attack you again. Although you are powerful, it will be difficult for you to fight against 4 hands." Li Yundong snorted and said, "Do you think I'm afraid of them?" Zi Yuan said, "Don't underestimate the 6 great sects. Although the 6 great sects are still very depressed, they have been spreading around for thousands of years. No one knows how deep their family background is. Even our Jinyi school doesn't dare to fall out with them. Last time, when the 6 great sects besieged the Fox Zen school, most of the people who came were the experts of the younger generation. The real masters did not come. If you make them angry, they will rush over. Even the Jinyi school will not be able to withstand it." Zi Yuan paused for a moment before continuing, "Most importantly, it's not suitable for you and me to show up directly. We just need to drive them away." Li Yundong asked, "How can we drive away these greedy guys if we don't show up?" The corners of Zi Yuan's mouth curled up, revealing a confident smile. Golden snakes are very powerful monsters. Even if they don't transform into human form, they are still very strong without using magic. And cultivators have a special characteristic, that is, they don't dare to use magic and magical items during thunderstorms for fear of attracting divine punishment. Therefore, as long as I can summon a thunderstorm, these cultivators will most likely not dare to use magic and magical items. I believe that if these 2 golden snakes are not stupid, they should immediately jump out and drive these cultivators away." Li Yundong asked curiously, "You can also summon wind and rain. How come I've never seen you use such a powerful magic before?" Zi Yuan smiled and said, "When Zhuge Liang asked for the east wind, he did it for several days in a row. It can be seen that if this kind of magic does not borrow the power of a magical item, it will take an extremely long time to cast. If I want to cast the magic, it will take a lot of time, at least an hour, and no one can disturb me in the middle. Otherwise, all my efforts will be in vain." Li Yundong said decisively, "Then hurry up and cast the magic. I'll protect you." Zi Yuan nodded and sat down cross-legged. She pinched her fingers together and closed her eyes. Soon, she entered a meditative state. Li Yundong felt that after Zi Yuan entered a meditative state, her whole body suddenly emitted a gentle force. Although this force was not very strong or turbulent, it was like a moisturizing spring rain. It seeped into the ground bit by bit and continued to spread. After a while, Li Yundong found that the humidity on the ground was getting heavier and heavier, and the dew on the leaves in the forest was also accumulating. Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly understood. It turned out that the principle of this magic was to urge the moisture on the ground to rise into the air, thereby increasing the moisture in the clouds and causing a thunderstorm. As he was thinking about it, he saw a trace of white cheek constantly rising from the ground and curling up into the air. This lasted for about half an hour. Slowly, Li Yundong felt a breeze begin to blow his cheeks. His heart skipped a beat. It's windy. When the wind moved, the clouds moved, the rain moved, and when the wind moved, thunder and lightning moved together. At this time, Jing Yuan and the other cultivators of various cultivation sects were blocking in front of the cave in the mountain, discussing what kind of magic they should use to deal with the 2 stinky snakes. They did not notice the abnormality around them at all. Seeing that they were discussing endlessly, one of the cultivators said impatiently, "You guys are talking endlessly here. Maybe the 2 stinky snakes have already run away." Immediately, a cultivator sneered and said, "Don't be silly. Their Yin spirits can escape, but their physical bodies can't." Once their physical bodies move, how can so many cultivators not find them? At this time, Zheng Yuan said loudly, "Fellow Taoists, if we continue to discuss like this, we don't know when it will end. I think we should take out our powerful magical weapons. If we have any skills, we can just go to the entrance of the snake cave. What do you think?" When the other cultivators heard this, they all said, "That's a good idea." However, there were also those who disagreed and said, "It's good, but when we catch these two stinky snakes, how are we going to divide the treasures?" Zheng Yuan pondered for a while and said, "It won't be too late for us to fight then. If we fight now, won't these two stinky snakes take advantage of the situation?" When the cultivators heard this, they thought that there was no other good way, so they said one after another, "Okay, let's do it this way." For a moment, these cultivators all took out their powerful magical weapons and bombarded the entrance of a secret stone cave. The cave was only the size of a basketball, but when these magical weapons hit it, a golden halo shield wall appeared, as if a solid and hard boundary was blocking these cultivators from invading. Li Yundong saw that the colorful magical weapons at the foot of the mountain took turns to bombard the entrance of the cave. The golden boundary was getting weaker and weaker, and it was obvious that it couldn't hold on any longer. Li Yundong felt that something was wrong, but seeing that Zi Yuan had been casting spells for a long time, he hesitated whether he should go out and stop them. But at this time, Ding Nan, who had been doing nothing and watching from the sidelines, suddenly felt a drop of water drip on her face. She couldn't help raising her head, touching the water stain on her cheek, and asked curiously, "It's raining?" Hearing this, Zheng Yuan said in surprise, "It's raining?" He twitched his sinuses and immediately became vigilant. No, the air wasn't so wet just now. Could it be that someone is casting spells nearby? Zheng Yuan shouted loudly, "Fellow Taoists, someone is casting spells nearby, trying to summon wind and thunder. Everyone, look around and see if anyone is casting spells. If you find them, kill them immediately." After he shouted, a cultivator immediately shouted, "Okay, let's take a look around." Hearing this, Li Yundong no longer hesitated. He immediately jumped into the field and shouted, "Stop, comma, // 785462789541. Chapter 301. Go to watch net. As soon as Li Yundong jumped out, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. However, because he was now traveling with his Yin spirit, his appearance and figure were very different from when he had fought with the Fox Zen school. Moreover, he was more than 10 meters away and had held his breath. For a moment, these cultivators didn't recognize him and thought that he was a nearby villager passing by. Go to watch net. Kai 98 when 1 Shui 0 net 6 immediately, a cultivator shouted, "Little boy, get out of here. Don't disturb your master's business here." Li Yundong deliberately stalled for time. Seeing that the other party didn't recognize him, he was happy to play dumb. He asked, "What are you doing here? You've made such a big noise that I can't sleep." A cultivator laughed and said, "You little boy, why are you running outside so late? The nearest house is 10 miles away from here. How did you get here?" Li Yundong rolled his eyes and said, "My father and I are hunting in the mountains and staying nearby for the night. You're disturbing us." A cultivator of the Jinshan sect said impatiently, "Then hurry up and move to another place. We are doing business here." Li Yundong deliberately pretended not to understand and asked, "What are you doing?" This question stunned these cultivators. They looked at each other and didn't know how to answer. They couldn't tell him that they were catching monsters here, could they? Seeing that the situation was not good, Zheng Yuan coughed dryly and said kindly, "Little friend, it's getting late. You should go back to sleep. We're here to catch the bad guys. It would be bad if we accidentally hurt you." Seeing that Zheng Yuan was being so polite, a cultivator next to him said impatiently, "Senior Zheng, why are you so polite to a little boy? He pointed at Li Yundong and shouted, "Hey, little boy, get out of here. Do you know who I am?" Li Yundong raised his head and snorted. "I don't know who you are, but do you know who I am and what my name is?" Li Yundong's arrogant and conceited look made the cultivators present a little uncertain about his words for a moment. Some of them muttered to themselves, "Look at his arrogant face. Could it be that he is the son of an official?" Immediately, someone retorted in a low voice, "Bullsh *t. What kind of Bullsh *t son of an official in this remote mountain? Hey, you don't understand, do you? Nowadays, it's popular for officials to find new and exciting things to do. They love to go to such remote places and hunt for fun. But I didn't bring a child here to play. Are you stupid? Do you know if he's an illegitimate child or not? Do you know if there's an official who brought his lover out to play, and it's not convenient for him to speak, so he asked this child to come out and talk? That makes sense. Watch net. Kai 98 when 1 Shui 0 net 6, but do you think we'll just let it go just because a child said a few words? B** starred, Li Yundong, do you want to die? Li Yundong, I let you go last time, but you came to us again this time. Do you really think that our 6 sects are easy to bully? Little B** starred, a mere master dares to be so arrogant? Do you really think that you're invincible under the heavens? Do you think that no one can defeat you? These people were shouting and cursing, and the powerful magical weapons in their hands were like a torrential downpour as they attacked Li Yunyang. Go to the net. 7 K.O.M. Li Yundong's spirit was out of his body. There was no powerful magical weapon beside him, and he couldn't make the mantra Mahamudra. He didn't dare to take it, so he immediately floated far away and let these powerful magical weapons hit nothing. Seeing that Li Yundong had run far away, these cultivators were about to chase after him when they suddenly heard a thunderous crack above their heads. They suddenly trembled and raised their heads at the same time. The bright moon above their heads had disappeared, and thick dark clouds covered their heads like a thick curtain. Thunder and lightning were rolling in the clouds, as if they would fall on their heads in the next second. Zheng Yuan's mind raced and he suddenly became furious. We've been tricked. This guy has an accomplice. These cultivators were shocked and angry at the same time. They cursed loudly, F***CKU, you have an accomplice. Who is it? If you have the guts, shout it out. Li Yundong put his hands on his hips and shouted, my accomplice is your grandfather. These words made these cultivators so angry that they were really like Buddha ascending to heaven and 2 Buddhas coming out of their bodies. Immediately, someone wanted to rush forward and fight with Li Yundong to the death. However, Li Yundong shouted, think about it carefully. The thunderstorm is coming. If you use magic or magical weapons, don't cry when the heavenly thunder hits you. These cultivators suddenly felt a chill in their hearts. They all knew that using magic and magical weapons was the most taboo in a thunderstorm, and the best chance was when cultivators gathered together. Cultivators were huge bodies of energy. Once they gathered together, they could easily become the target of the heavenly thunder. If a thunderbolt struck them, they would all be finished. Zheng Yuan saw that the thunder and lightning rolling in the dark clouds were getting more and more powerful. He hesitated for a moment, and suddenly a yellow light rushed out of the cave. A giant python instantly swallowed a cultivator. Zheng Yuan was shocked and made a prompt decision. He grabbed Ding Nan's hand and shouted, let's go. He didn't dare to fly, so he pulled Ding Nan and ran away. Ding Nan saw that Li Yundong had once again forced everyone to retreat by himself, laughing and scolding in a cynical manner. He was really unrestrained. She sighed in her heart. Chapter 302. Go to watch net. Li Yundong suddenly saw that the golden python was about to swallow him. He was shocked and angry. Relying on the amazing speed of his Yin spirit, he dodged it in an instant. Go to watch net. 7 K.O. Hong N.O. Li Yundong saw that the golden snake was as fast as a yellow bolt of lightning. If it weren't for the fact that he was a Yin spirit, he would have been swallowed by the golden python just now. He was about to shout angrily when he saw another golden body come out of the cave and turn into a human form. It was the yellow-clothed woman who had led Li Yundong here before. She shouted anxiously to the huge golden python beside her, "Husband, this is our benefactor. What are you doing?" The huge golden python stopped and stared at Li Yundong with its bell-like eyes. It said coldly and ferociously, "So what if he is our benefactor? He came to help us out of selfishness. Humph, these human beings are the most greedy, vicious, and selfish ones. Why is it unforgivable for us to kill them, while they kill us to enforce justice on behalf of heaven? Why?" Li Yundong said angrily, "You be **starred, you can't distinguish between good and evil, right from wrong. Have you cultivated for 100 years been in vain?" The huge golden python laughed and said, "All living things in the world are equal. Isn't this also the slogan of you human beings? But in the end, aren't you guys the butcher and the good guy at the same time? Who would believe your lies? I think you are a good person because you are greedy and coveting my Naiden and my wife's. You are not a good person either. You want my Naiden? Well, come and get it from my stomach." As it spoke, it shrank back and then pounced on Li Yundong like lightning. Li Yundong saw that there was a red crown sarcoma on the top of the golden python's head. Its upper and lower jaws were large, and its bloody mouth could even swallow a tiger in an instant. It also spat out a mouthful of poisonous gas. Before it reached him, he could already smell the fishy smell. Li Yundong knew that although he was a Yin spirit, if he was swallowed by the other party, his Yin spirit would be refined immediately. He was shocked and angry. Just as he was about to dodge, he saw that the woman in yellow beside him had also turned into a golden python, but her body was slightly smaller and shorter. She anxiously entangled the python and said, "Husband, calm down. This is our benefactor." The giant python shook its body and swung its tail, shaking off the yellow-clothed woman who had transformed into a golden python. It shouted angrily, "Get lost. It won't be too late to let me devour this fellow first." If Li Yundong had the fan of 7 treasures in his hand, he would have been able to fight with this golden python. But at this time, his Yin spirit was wandering, so how could he defeat this golden python? He had saved the 2 snake demons out of kindness, but he had been bitten back. The anger in his heart could not be any greater. He wanted to turn into a cyan light and leave, but he heard Zi Yuan's voice transmission, "Li Yundong, lead them to the entrance of the cave. You have the body of Yin spirit, so you can get into the mountain." Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately flew to the cave. Go to the net. 7 K.O.M. As soon as he thought of this, he flew to the entrance of the cave and got into it. Although the entrance was very small, the inside was huge. At first, Li Yundong's vision was blocked by the rocks and soil, but soon he found that the cave was huge, making him feel suddenly enlightened. As soon as Li Yundong got into the cave, he saw the huge golden python following him like a shadow, chasing after him aggressively. Its body was extremely long, at least 40 to 50 meters long, and its waist was about 1.5 meters thick. It was like a golden dragon swimming on the ground. Li Yundong couldn't help but gasp when he saw it. He thought to himself, no wonder it said that snakes are the sons of dragons. It's not without reason. However, although this golden python was big, it still seemed very small after getting into the cave. After a while, the golden python that the yellow-clothed woman had transformed into chased after him. The two snakes were moving and dodging in the cave, but the cave still seemed very empty. Li Yundong took advantage of the moment and the two golden snakes were entangled again and immediately flew out of the cave. Seeing that Li Yundong wanted to escape, the huge golden python immediately roared, "Where are you going?" The sound shook the stone walls of the cave and made them rustle down. Li Yundong saw that the entrance of the cave was getting narrower and narrower, and the golden python behind him was getting closer and closer. He suddenly jumped out of the cave. Just as the golden python was about to jump out, Ziyuan suddenly appeared at the entrance of the cave. She pinched her fingers together at lightning speed and patted the entrance of the cave with her fingers. With a boom, a few strange runes quickly burned beside Ziyuan's palm, turning into a purple enchantment that firmly sealed the golden snake inside. The golden python was trapped inside and frantically struggled against the boundary, causing the entire mountain to tremble slightly. Its pair of cold golden eyes made people's hair stand on end. Ziyuan said loudly to Li Yundong, go back to your body." Li Yundong nodded, and the two of them instantly turned into two beams of blue light and flew back. By the time they returned to their own bodies, the sky was beginning to turn white, and it was a little bright. Su Chan and the others, who were guarding Li Yundong's body, immediately jumped up when they saw Li Yundong's Yin spirit return. They were furious and said, "This bastard, I'm going to skin it." Ziyuan also stood up and said with a serious face, "We have to get to the entrance of the cave immediately. This boundary can only last for one day. If we get there late, I'm afraid that the two golden snakes will break through and hurt the innocent." Su Chan, Wan Hongling, and Zhou Qin, who were next to them, didn't know what had happened to them. They looked at them with confused faces. Su Chan had rarely seen Li Yundong so angry. She pulled his sleeve timidly and asked in a low voice, "Yundong, what's wrong with you?" Li Yundong snorted heavily and told them what had happened. Suddenly, Su Chan, Wan Hongling, and Zhou Qin all looked angry. Su Chan said loudly, "I can't believe there are such ungrateful people in this world. It's really hateful." Wan Hongling cast a sidelong glance at her and sneered, "Ungrateful monster. Why are you looking at me?" Su Chan said angrily. Wan Hongling retorted sarcastically, "If you don't look at me, how do you know I'm looking at you? Or are you feeling guilty?" Su Chan was furious. Just as she was about to roll up her sleeves and argue with Wan Hongling, Li Yundong shouted, "Stop arguing. Su Chan, you stay here. Ziyuan and I will go and deal with these two bastards." "No, I want to go too." Su Chan shouted. "I want to go too." Wan Hongling also said, "I want to go too." "Sister Ziyuan, I can help." Li Yundong knew that Su Chan and Wan Hongling were not weak. Even if they couldn't help, they could protect themselves. He pondered for a moment, then nodded and agreed. "Watch net." Li Yundong looked at Zhou Qin, only to see that she was staring at him, her eyes full of hope. Li Yundong couldn't help but say awkwardly, "Zhou Qin, you haven't officially started cultivating. Not to mention the Zhuji phase, you haven't even passed the first heaven. You can only stay here and wait for us." There was disappointment in Zhou Qin's eyes, but she still smiled, nodded, and said, "Well, I'll wait for you here." Li Yundong smiled apologetically at Zhou Qin, then flew out quickly with Ziyuan, Su Chan, and Wan Hongling with a sullen face. Zhou Qin watched the four of them leave together. For a moment, she was the only one left in the stone room. She felt lost, and her expression was gloomy. However, she was competitive and determined. After a while, she clenched her fists and swore in her heart, "Sooner or later, I, Zhou Qin, will surpass Ziyuan and become the #1 female cultivator in the world." Li Yundong didn't know that Zhou Qin had made a vow in her heart and was determined to devote herself to cultivation. He flew at the fastest speed in anger. When the sky began to brighten, they had already flown to the place where the golden snake was trapped. The thunderstorms summoned by Zi Yuan came and went quickly. When Li Yundong arrived, the sky was still cloudy, but there were no thick dark clouds like last night. Before Li Yundong and the others landed in the air, they saw that the foot of the mountain was already surrounded by people. Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat and he looked at Zi Yuan. Zi Yuan said in a low voice, "It seems that they are all from the secular world. Let's go down and see what's going on." Li Yundong nodded. The group found a remote place to land and quickly came to the foot of the mountain. Before they got close, they saw a construction team busy at the foot of the mountain. Because there were many secular people, most cultivators did not show up. There were two people standing next to an excavator. One of them was wearing a yellow safety helmet, and the other was wearing the white gloves that drivers usually wore. The man wearing the white gloves said loudly, "Foreman Zhang, I'm not looking for an excuse. I really dreamed that there were two golden snakes fighting last night. When I went back to sleep this morning, I dreamed that a snake warned me not to come." As he spoke, the villagers next to him also said, "Yes, yes, I also dreamed of it. Yes, last night, the sky and earth shook, and then there was wind and thunder. It was so scary. Foreman, we'd better not dig. It's unlucky." The foreman surnamed Zhang shouted, "Do you have the final say or do I have the final say? Hurry up and get to work." When the villagers heard this, they became anxious and stepped forward to persuade him. While these people were quarreling, a voice suddenly came from the side. "What's going on?" The foreman surnamed Zhang looked back and saw his boss looking at him with a briefcase under his arm. Next to him stood an old man with a ruddy complexion. Next to the old man stood a tall and beautiful woman. They were Zheng Yuan and Ding Nan. The foreman surnamed Zhang glanced greedily at Ding Nan, then said to his boss with a flattering smile, "Manager Shen, why are you here?" Manager Shen snorted. "Why aren't you starting work? Don't you see that the guests next to me are urging us to hurry up?" The foreman surnamed Zhang smiled obsequiously. He took out a pack of cigarettes from his arms, pulled out a few, and handed them to Zheng Yuan. Zheng Yuan raised his palm, shook his head, and said lightly, "Hurry up and get to work. I'm paying for it. I'm not letting you talk here." The foreman surnamed Zhang's smile widened when he was refused. He nodded and bowed. Okay, let's get to work immediately." After that, when he turned around, his face was already ferocious and arrogant. He roared loudly, "Get to work. If you don't, you won't get your salary this month." His roar immediately deterred the workers in the engineering team and made them leave resentfully. The driver wearing white gloves had no choice but to climb onto the excavator and start the engine. At this time, Li Yundong, Zi Yuan, and the others, who were watching from a distance, all saw the clues. If the excavator dug at the entrance of the cave, it would immediately dig up the boundary and the golden snake would escape. At that time, innocent villagers would definitely be injured or killed. Zi Yuan, who had always been calm, couldn't help but frown and say angrily, "As the leader of the Yin-Yang sect in Mount Wuhua, how can Zheng Yuan be so insidious and vicious?" Su Chan said with a face full of anger, "This man is so insidious. He actually drove the villagers to dig the soil to drive the golden snake out." Li Yundong sneered and said, "If he does too much evil, he will die. He will have retribution." Wan Hongling also said angrily, "Zheng Yuan is so insidious. How can we sit back and watch a tragedy happen?" Li Yundong snorted coldly and said, "I'll stop him." But as soon as he finished speaking, the excavator roared. When the shovel dug down, there was a loud bang, and a golden light rushed straight out of the mountain. The driver of the excavator only felt a fishy smell coming toward him, and a sharp light pierced his heart. He screamed in pain and fell off the truck. Not only him, but all the villagers on the scene covered their chests with painful expressions on their faces. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was looking at him, Zheng Yuan raised his hand and released a thumb-sized silver shuttle. Although the silver shuttle shone with a silver light, it could not be seen in the daytime. In the blink of an eye, it pierced through the sarcoma on the head of the golden snake that had escaped. The golden snake shook all over and fell to the ground with a bang, but then the other golden snake instantly turned into a golden light and disappeared from everyone's sight. The sudden change stunned everyone. Some of the villagers were so shocked that they lost control of their bowels and urine. Their pants were wet. Even the arrogant foreman Zhang and manager Shen were so scared that their pants were dripping with water. Their bodies were stiff and they couldn't say a word. Only the driver of the excavator fell to the ground, trembling all over. It seemed that he would die. Li Yundong and the others were stunned when they saw this scene. Li Yundong and Zi Yuan looked at each other and said in unison, "Chase. Sorry, I drank too much last night. I went to my room in a daze at about 9 o'clock, and I couldn't get on the internet at all. Today is the second watch from yesterday. //7854627895541." Chapter 303. Go to watch net. Li Yundong and Zi Yuan shouted, and the two of them instantly chased after the fleeing golden python. Wan Hongling and Su Chan did not dare to delay and followed closely behind. Go to watch net. Li Yundong originally thought that he would have to chase it for a long time, but he didn't expect that the giant python would only jump to the top of the mountain, then turn into a human form and stand in front of a huge rock, motionless. Li Yundong turned his head and made a gesture to Zi Yuan, Su Chan, and Wan Hongling. The four of them landed in four directions and surrounded the golden snake. "Let's see where you can run now." Li Yundong snorted. Zi Yuan said lightly, "Since you didn't hurt any innocent people just now, I'll spare your body." Su Chan also said angrily, "You don't know what's good for you, you stinky snake. My Yundong was kind enough to save you, but you actually want to eat him?" Wan Hongling had always hated evil, so she didn't say anything more. She directly took out the red silk magical item and stared at it covetously. This golden python was the male golden python that had wanted to swallow Li Yundong before. After transforming into a human form, he was also a handsome young man. He stood there with tears streaming down his face. He looked at Su Chan, then at Li Yundong and the others. He laughed bitterly, but his tears kept falling. The golden python pointed at Li Yundong and said loudly, "You humans have always wanted to kill us. What's wrong with me wanting to kill you? Although my wife is a demon, she is kind and has never harmed a human life. She knew that humans were going to dig up our nest, so she took the initiative to rush out and cover my escape. Who would have thought that I would be killed by a sinister and shameless sneak attack? How dare you blame me?" Before Li Yundong had time to speak, Su Chan said angrily, "That was a sneak attack by others. What does it have to do with us?" The golden python roared, "What's the difference? When we demons kill a human, you say that all the demons in the world are bad. In our opinion, aren't all human beings in the world evil?" Hearing this, Su Chan's whole body trembled, and for a moment, she was speechless. After the golden python finished roaring, its resentment seemed to have dissipated a lot. It stood in front of a huge rock on the top of the mountain and gently stroked the surface of the rock with its hand. With tears streaming down its face, it said, "My wife and I have been cultivating for 100 years. I didn't expect to encounter such a disaster. Now that my wife died to cover my escape, what's the point of me living alone?" As he spoke, he let out a loud roar, lowered his head, and slammed into the boulder. In the blink of an eye, the top of his skull split open, and blood splattered on the surface of the boulder. Watch net. 7 KOM. Li Yunyang's face was full of shock, and the anger on his face suddenly disappeared. Zi Yuan and Wan Hongling, who were beside him, were also moved. They looked at the golden python in disbelief and were speechless. Li Yundong walked up to the golden python and said in a deep voice with a pained expression, "Do you have any last words?" The top of the golden python's skull had been smashed, but it didn't die for a while. However, it could only breathe out, not in. It reluctantly looked at Li Yunyang and struggled to say in a low voice, "I only hate myself for being greedy in trying to taint the Medicine King tripod and the immortal pen. Now that I think about it, it's too late to regret it. If you are really a good person, please bury me with my wife's body. I was born with her, but I can't die with her. I can't die in peace." As he struggled to speak, he spat out a mouthful of blood and said weakly, I hope I won't be a demon in my next life." After that, the golden python's body shook and its eyes widened. After taking its last breath, it finally stopped breathing. Su Chan couldn't help but feel sad for her own kind. She threw herself into Li Yundong's arms and said with tears streaming down her face, "Yundong, don't hate him anymore, okay?" Li Yundong sighed in his heart. He gently held the little girl's waist and sighed. Death is like a lamp going out. What hatred can't be resolved? Su Chan raised her head with tears in her eyes. "I'm so afraid that one day we will become like this." Li Yundong smiled slightly and stroked the little girl's head lovingly. "Don't be silly. If anyone dares to touch you, even if he is the Jade Emperor, I will destroy his whole family." Li Yundong's words were soft, but there was a murderous intent in them, and there was a faint sense of extremely strong confidence and firm will. Hearing this, Su Chan couldn't help but feel a lot less anxious and sad. She raised her head and looked at Li Yundong in a daze. She only felt that with this boy by her side, she didn't have to be afraid even if the sky fell down. The little girl gave a heavy hum, and there was a strong sense of attachment and lingering in her eyes. The two of them looked at each other and didn't care that there were other people next to them. For a moment, they were stunned. Although Wan Hongling hated evil, people's hearts were made of flesh after all. When she saw the golden python die for love, the anger in her heart dissipated a lot. She walked to Zi Yuan's side and whispered, "Sister Zi Yuan, what should we do now?" Zi Yuan raised her head and looked at Li Yundong and Su Chan. For a moment, her expression was a little complicated. After a while, she came to her senses. She sighed softly and said with a sigh, "I don't know either. Go to the internet. 113 Shui 4 net." Wan Hongling said softly, "Sister Zi Yuan, have you heard the news that the immortal pen and the Medicine King tripod are going to appear?" Zi Yuan hesitated for a moment and said, "I've heard some rumors, but the immortal pen is a magical item of Wuxia during the Three Kingdoms period. It has been more than 1,800 years since it disappeared. I don't believe that a magical item that has disappeared for so many years will appear again. The Medicine King tripod is even more frightening. It is the alchemy magical item of Sun Simiao, the king of medicine. It is said that Sun Simiao once used it to refine 3 elixirs of life at the same time." Wan Hongling took a deep breath and said involuntarily, 3 elixirs of life can be refined at the same time in one furnace? How is that possible? Zi Yuan also nodded and said, "I don't believe it either. After all, it's just a legend, but the Medicine King tripod is a necessary magical item to refine the 3 elixirs of life. After the birth of Renyuan Jindan a few days ago, I suspected that the Medicine King tripod had also appeared. Now it seems that the news of the birth of the Medicine King tripod may be true." The two of them were whispering. At this time, Li Yundong had already come over with Su Chan in his arms. He asked in confusion, "What is true?" After Zi Yuan told them what they had said, she said, "Regardless of whether the birth of the immortal pen is true or not, at least we can be sure that the birth of the Medicine King tripod is most likely true. Zi Yuan sighed and said, alas, since the birth of Renyuan Jin Dan, the cultivation world, which was originally calm, has begun to be turbulent. In order to compete for Renyuan Jin Dan, the masters of all the major sects fought on Mount Gazao. Even Wan Jinyuan, the leader of the Gazao sect, was forced to flee from Mount Gazao. I really don't know what kind of bloody storm will be set off once the Medicine King tripod is born. Wan Hongling looked at Li Yundong and suddenly said to Zi Yuan with a smile, I think that ever since this guy stepped into the cultivation world, the world has been in chaos. Could it be that this guy is a devil who has descended to the world? Zi Yuan glared at her and said, don't talk nonsense. Li Yundong didn't care. He thought for a while and said, although this golden python attacked me first, it died for love. It's moving. Let's bury him with his wife. After Li Yundong said this, Wan Hongling, who had been very hostile to the snake demon, didn't say anything. The group flew to the foot of the mountain under the cover of the woods. At this time, the foot of the mountain was in chaos. Some people were controlling the excavator to lift the dead golden snake high, and others were taking pictures with their mobile phones. After the foreman, manager, and Zheng Yuan at the foot of the mountain whispered to each other for a while, the manager took out his mobile phone and made a phone call. After a while, a truck came from the mountain and a driver jumped out. Foreman Zhang shouted, get out of the way, get out of the way. This snake is going to be sent to the research institute. Get out of the way. Someone pointed at the driver who had fallen to the ground and shouted, Leader Zhang, hurry up and take him to the hospital. Maybe he can still be saved. Foreman Zhang looked at the driver and said impatiently, isn't he already out of breath? A villager touched his chest and said loudly, he's still breathing. His heart is still beating. Hurry up and send him to the hospital. Maybe he can still be saved. Foreman Zhang frowned and said, then we'll send him later. Call 120 for a taxi later. When the villagers heard this, they were all angry. They surrounded him and shouted, how can you be like this? You don't save a living person, but send a dead snake to them. Do you think that a living person's life is less important than a dead snake? Seeing that the crowd was angry, Foreman Zhang shouted in panic, what do you want to do? Do you want to rebel? The villagers were so angry that they surrounded the car tightly. Don't even think about leaving if you don't save him. Foreman Zhang panicked and turned to look at the manager not far away. The manager was also scared and turned to look at Zheng Yuan. Zheng Yuan smiled kindly and said, it's just one person. Take him with you. It's no big deal. Only then did the villagers' anger turn into joy. Seeing Zheng Yuan's youthful face and sage-like appearance, they all called him a living bodhisattva and a living immortal. The villagers hurriedly carried the golden python, which was dozens of meters long, onto the truck. Then, they also carried the driver onto the truck and put him together with the corpse of the golden snake. Then, a few villagers jumped onto the truck, patted it, and shouted, we can go now. Zheng Yuan smiled and took Ding Nan to the front seat of the truck. The driver started the engine, and the car roared as it drove along the mountain road. Li Yunyang saw that there were too many mortals at the foot of the mountain, and it was not good for him to go out and rob them, so he said to Zi Yuan, let's follow them and wait for an opportunity on the way. What do you think? Zi Yuan nodded and said, that's what I think too. The group of people didn't dare to get too close and just followed at a distance. The car drove along the mountain road. When it reached a rugged and remote place, the person behind the car suddenly patted the window in front and shouted, this man is dead. Zheng Yuan looked back and saw that the driver was dead. He sighed and said, he's dead. Let's not hurry. We've been driving for so long. Let's take a break and have a cigarette. The driver knew that Zheng Yuan was a big shot. Even the foreman and manager had to curry favor with him, so he was at least a rich man. He was overjoyed, turned off the engine, and said, "That's good." Zheng Yuan took out a pack of cigarettes from nowhere and handed it to the driver. The driver carefully took out a cigarette with both hands and lit it as if he had found a treasure. He took a puff and let out a long breath, as if what he had just inhaled was not a cigarette but immortal qi. Zheng Yuan squinted at Ding Nan and said, "Do you want one?" Ding Nan often went to all kinds of social places with Zhou Qin, so she was not afraid of smoking and drinking. She took out a cigarette casually, then took out the cigarette lighter on the car and was about to light it. At this time, Zheng Yuan squeezed Ding Nan's hand and winked at her, indicating that she should stay in the car and not get out. Ding Nan was stunned and didn't understand what Zheng Yuan meant. But before she could react, Zheng Yuan had already gotten out of the car. After greeting the driver and the villagers in the car, he gave them cigarettes with a smile on his face. The villagers smiled and went over to take the cigarettes, but the moment they got close, Zheng Yuan suddenly jumped up. His thumb, like an iron chisel, poked the villagers' temples. The temple was one of the fatal acupuncture points of the human body. Even an ordinary child could stab a living person to death, let alone a cultivator like Zheng Yuan. In the blink of an eye, the villagers fell to the ground without even making a sound. Ding Nan was so stunned that she didn't even notice that the lit cigarette in her mouth had fallen on her body. It wasn't until the cigarette butt burned her that she realized what had happened. She slapped the cigarette away, rushed out of the car, and asked in surprise, "Master, why did you kill them?" Zheng Yuan sneered. "If I hadn't killed them, how could I have taken this golden snake away?" Li Yundong, who had been following them from a distance, saw that Zheng Yuan had suddenly killed people. Even if he wanted to save them, he was too far away to do so. He suddenly became furious and rushed over quickly, shouting angrily, "Zheng Yuan, aren't you afraid of retribution and divine punishment, //7854627899541. Chapter 304. Go to watch net. Li Yundong's sudden appearance surprised Zheng Yuan, especially when Zi Yuan, Su Chan, Wan Hongling, and the others appeared behind him. He was shocked and felt that something was wrong. Go to watch net. Kai 98 when 1 Shui 0 net 6. If it was a one-on-one battle, Zheng Yuan believed that he was stronger than Li Yundong, but if Zi Yuan was added, then Zheng Yuan would have some doubts, especially when there was the three-tailed fox spirit and Wan Hongling from the Linggong sect of the Zhengyi school. Although Wan Hongling's cultivation was not high, the red silk magical item in her hand was not a joke. Zheng Yuan was experienced and knowledgeable, so of course he knew how powerful this magical item was. He also knew that he didn't have the virgin yang blood to break this magical item. He had to fight against 4 people alone, especially with Ding Nan, a burden who didn't know any magic, so he wanted to retreat. Seeing that he had been caught red-handed, Zheng Yuan didn't deny it. He just smiled slightly and said, "It turns out to be Zhenrenli. Do you also like this century-old golden python?" He rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Zhenrenli, why don't you take the skin and scales of this golden snake, and I only want its meat. The skin and scales are a good treasure that is invulnerable to swords and spears, as well as water and fire. It will be very powerful if it is made into a Taoist robe or magical item." Li Yundong's face changed, and the anger in his eyes grew. Seeing Li Yundong's expression change, Zheng Yuan thought that he had seen through his wishful thinking. He chuckled and said, "What, Zhenrenli doesn't agree? Well, do you want the meat inside?" The meat of the century-old spirit snake is not only used to refine all kinds of elixirs, but also a good nourishing medicinal material. I'll suffer a loss. I want the skin, and you want the meat. How about that? Seeing that Li Yundong's face was becoming more and more ugly, Zheng Yuan frowned and said, "Zhenrenli, do you still want to compete with me for this Naiden? How about this? The snake's flesh, skin, and scales will all belong to you, but the Niden will belong to me. How about that? Seeing that he was bargaining as if it were a piece of cake, Li Yundong was furious. He said angrily, "You are the leader of a sect. How can you be so shameless, insidious, and vicious? You kill people without batting an eye. Aren't you afraid that killing these people will attract the heavenly tribulation?" Zheng Yuan said impatiently, "Jinren Li, I only call you Jinren because I respect you. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. In terms of age, I'm a little older than your grandfather. It's not your turn to lecture me. I'm not killing people with Dharma treasures or Dharma spells, so why would I attract the heavenly tribulation?" Li Yundong said angrily, "Be ****, you are really heartless. You have lived for so many years in vain." Zheng Yuan glanced at them and sneered, "Why? Are you a good person? And you, Jinren Zi Yuan, why are you with the leader of the Fox Zen school?" "Humph, when Zhou Ping said that you colluded with Li Yundong, I didn't believe it, but now it seems to be true. If this were to spread out, it wouldn't sound too good. Hey, Jinren Li, look at yourself. You're in cahoots with a vixen and a demon. How dare you criticize me? Heh, I think you're the shameless one." Li Yundong was so angry that the veins on his forehead bulged. He took a deep breath and made a gesture with one hand behind him. He slowly mobilized his Jinshi and prepared to attack Zheng Yuan. Watch net. 7 KOM. Seeing this gesture, Zi Yuan and the others quietly surrounded Zheng Yuan and Ding Nan from 3 other directions. Li Yundong looked at Ding Nan meaningfully and said, "Ding Nan, I didn't expect you to hang out with such a person. I advise you to quickly come over and repent before it's too late. Otherwise, you'll sink deeper and deeper." Li Yundong's words made Zheng Yuan's heart tighten. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Ding Nan, thinking to himself, "Pinger has already changed her body. How could Li Yundong know her? The situation in front of me would be difficult to resolve. It would be fine if I was alone. If I couldn't defeat them, I could still run. But with Ping by my side, how could I escape?" It seemed like he had no choice but to bear the pain and leave Ping behind. Zheng Yuan looked at Ding Nan. As long as Ding Nan had the slightest intention of escaping, he would kill her with one palm first and then run away. Ding Nan had been with Zhou Qin for a long time, and she often fawned on the rich and powerful in the officialdom and business circles. She was very good at observing people's expressions. She glanced around and saw Zheng Yuan squinting at her, clenching and relaxing his fingers. His expression was really murderous. Ding Nan's heart trembled. She thought quickly and immediately made a decision. She quietly moved closer to Zheng Yuan and said in a low voice, "Master, you can use me as a hostage to threaten Li Yundong. He won't do anything to us." Zheng Yuan's heart skipped a beat and he asked in a low voice, "How do you know?" Ding Nan's heart was filled with mixed feelings, but she said calmly, "Because the owner of this body is his classmate." Hearing this, Zheng Yuan was overjoyed. He immediately grabbed Ding Nan's throat with his 5 fingers like hooks and shouted, "Li Yundong, don't push your luck. Be careful or I'll strangle your classmate." Li Yundong hadn't expected that Zheng Yuan would use Ding Nan to threaten him. He was shocked and angry. "Zheng Yuan, you won't even let go of your own disciple?" Zheng Yuan laughed and said, "I'd rather betray the world than let the world betray me. Little girl, have you never been educated?" Li Yundong spat on the ground fiercely. "Bah, I think you've been educated for nothing." One Hongling shouted angrily behind Zheng Yuan, "Li Yundong, why are you talking so much nonsense with this bastard? I don't believe he would dare kill his own disciple." However, Li Yundong saw that Zheng Yuan's eyes were full of murderous intent. His 5 fingers were like hooks, and as long as he exerted force, Ding Nan's throat would be broken. Especially just now, he had seen Jing Yuan's sage-like and kind appearance, but in the blink of an eye, he had killed several people without batting an eyelid. Obviously, he was cruel and merciless. If he was forced into a corner, he would definitely kill Ding Nan and run away. Go to the internet. Li Yundong glared at Jing Yuan hatefully, gritted his teeth, and said, "Well, Jing Yuan, you win. But let me tell you, you can only use this move once. Next time, I will absolutely not be lenient." After that, he roared at Ding Nan, "Ding Nan, if you do too much evil, you will bring about your own destruction. Did you hear that? This time, I'll let him go for your sake. Next time I see you with him, I'll turn my back on you." Li Yundong's roar was really like thousands of bells ringing at the same time, making Ding Nan see stars in front of her eyes and the qi and blood in her chest churn. Jing Yuan sneered, rolled up his sleeves, and quickly turned into a wisp of black smoke, flying into the air with Ding Nan. However, when he was halfway in the air, he was greedily attached to the body of the golden snake and refused to leave for a while. Zi Yuan shouted coldly, "Jing Yuan, why are you still here? Do you want us to go back on our word?" Only then did Jing Yuan's heart tremble. He let out a long roar of anger and unwillingness. Without looking at the body of the golden snake any longer, he fled into the distance. After he flew back to the cave residence on Mount Wuhua with Ding Nan, he turned from a wisp of black smoke into a human form. When the disciples in the cave saw him and Ding Nan returning, they all came forward with great joy and said, "Master, eldest Shiji, you're back." Jing Yuan still had a kind smile on his face and nodded kindly to his disciple. But when he took Ding Nan into his inner mansion, his expression suddenly changed, and his innocent face became extremely ferocious. Jing Yuan picked up a teapot beside him, smashed it on the ground, and shouted angrily, "How dare you? You killed my adopted son and stole my treasure. You've really gone too far." Ding Nan was startled. She rolled her eyes quickly, stepped forward with a smile, and gently stroked Jing Yuan's back. She said softly, "Master, don't be angry. As the saying goes, it's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Moreover, when I succeed in my cultivation, won't I be able to help you take revenge?" Only then did Jing Yuan's anger dissipate a lot. He turned his face, nodded to Ding Nan, and said approvingly, "Well done, you did a good job today. My painstaking efforts to cultivate you were not in vain. From now on, you can take all the elixirs I've collected. I will help you improve your cultivation as soon as possible. In the future, you will deal with Zi Yuan, who looks like an immortal on the outside but is like a prostitute on the inside. Humph, Li Yundong killed my adopted son, and today he stole my treasure. I must take revenge. When you succeed in your cultivation, I want to see if they dare to be so arrogant next time. Do they think there's no one in Mount Wuhua?" After that, he suddenly thought of something. He took out a 3-inch-long golden hairpin from his sleeve and handed it to Ding Nan. He said with a smile, "This is the threaded hairpin of traversing soul that I snatched from the Fox Zen school. Take it and wear it with you every day to wear down its spiritual qi. When you succeed in your cultivation, you can refine it into your own powerful magical weapon." He, Li Yundong would never have thought that you would use the powerful magical weapon of the Fox Zen school to fight the Fox Zen school. Ha ha ha. His expression must have been wonderful at that time. Ding Nan took the threaded hairpin of traversing soul with a smile on her face. "Thank you, master." Jing Yuan waved his hand. "As long as you work hard in your cultivation, I will give you whatever you want. I don't want to swallow this insult for even a day longer." As he said this, he chuckled and stroked Ding Nan's soft hair. "When you succeed in your cultivation, the two of us can revive the Yin-Yang sect of Mount Wuhua." Seeing his obscene smile, Ding Nan felt as if she had swallowed a fly. She endured the discomfort and smiled with Jing Yuan, but when she turned around, the smile on her face disappeared in an instant, replaced by a cold expression. Ding Nan held the threaded hairpin of traversing soul tightly in her hand. She had seen with her own eyes how Yen Fong had used this magical item to destroy the arrogant Yi Yu. Ding Nan's heart skipped a beat. She wished she could immediately stab the threaded hairpin of traversing soul into the old lecher's throat. But she knew that it was not the right time. She gently stroked the body of the threaded hairpin of traversing soul with her fingers and thought to herself, Li Yundong, sooner or later, I will make you look at me in the eye. After Zheng Yuan escaped with Ding Nan, Wan Hongling shouted angrily, You let that bastard escape just like that? Damn it, I'm so angry. Even if we call the police to arrest him, it would be better. Nonsense, of course, the affairs of cultivators should be settled in the cultivation world. Li Yunyang took a deep breath, suppressed his anger, and said, Let's take the body of this golden snake back and bury it with the previous one. Wan Hongling sneered and said, The dead are lying on the ground and no one is collecting their bodies, but someone is eager to collect the body of this dead snake demon. What is this? It wasn't until noon that Li Yundong returned to the secret cave of the Fox Zen school. Zhou Qin, who had been waiting for him, immediately came up to him and asked, How was it? Li Yundong smiled at her and said, It's a long story. I'll tell you later. Let's go back to the Fox Zen school first. The group of people flew down from the cliff and landed in the Taoist temple. Chao Yi, who was cleaning up the debris in the former leader's room, heard the noise and came out to take a look. Her face was full of surprise and joy. She greeted them loudly and said, Leader, you're back. I found the property of our Fox Zen school, //7854627895541. Chapter 305. Go to watch net. Chao Yi's words made Li Yundong overjoyed, and his previous unhappiness faded a lot. He said with a smile, Really? What property? Where is it? Take me to have a look. Only then did Chao Yi notice that there were other people around Li Yundong. She glanced around and saw that Zi Yuan and Wan Hongling of the Jingyi school, who had participated in the siege of the Fox Zen school, were also there, as well as Su Chan and Li Yundong's eldest disciple, Zhou Qin. Go to watch net. 7 K.O.M. Chao Yi was shocked and thought to herself, Zhou Ping of the Jingyi school said that the leader colluded with Zi Yuan. At that time, when I saw the two of them fighting, I thought it was slander. Now it seems to be true. The sixth Shibwa of the Fox Zen school bowed slightly to Zi Yuan and Wan Hongling and said, Amateus, greetings, fellow Taoist of the Jingyi school and the Linggong sect. Although Wan Hongling had always regarded herself as a member of a righteous sect and looked down on evil people like the Fox Zen school, at this time, she was in someone else's territory, so she couldn't be arrogant. She obediently followed Zi Yuan's example and bowed in return. After bowing, Zi Yuan said softly, I had no choice but to participate in the siege of the Fox Zen school last time. I hope you can forgive me. Chao Yi was a smart person. When she saw Li Yundong and Zi Yuan together, she immediately figured out why Zi Yuan had jumped out to deal with Li Yundong in name, but was secretly helping him. If Zi Yuan hadn't proposed to fight them one by one, no matter how powerful Li Yundong was, he wouldn't have been able to stop so many cultivators. Having figured this out, Chao Yi said respectfully from the bottom of her heart, Jinren Zi Yuan is broad-minded and doesn't attach as much importance to the rules of the sect as other cultivators do. On behalf of the entire Fox Zen school, I would like to express my gratitude to Jinren Zi Yuan for her help. Zi Yuan smiled slightly and didn't comment. Li Yundong had originally been very worried that the people of the Fox Zen school would have a conflict with Zi Yuan, so he hadn't informed Chao Yi and the others immediately. But now it seemed that he had been too worried. He laughed and waved his hand. you two don't have to be so polite. Shibwa Chow Yi, take me to see the property of the Fox Zen School. I'm so poor now. In a few days, I'm afraid I'll have to beg in the streets of the Fox Zen School. His words made the others laugh. Chow Yi nodded and said with a smile, then let's go now. Li Yundong smiled and pointed at Chow Yi's Taoist robe. Do you want to go down the mountain like this? Aren't you afraid of being photographed? Zhou Qin was wearing a casual shirt and a pair of straight jeans, which outlined her figure in all the right places. Wan Hongling was also dressed in a student's uniform, which made her look young and beautiful. Although Chow Yi was a cultivator, she had followed the leader down the mountain and changed into a new outfit. She looked a little excited and said with a smile, I don't know the details, but I saw in the leader's notes that it was 328, Hong Kong Street, Mudu, Dongwu City. We'll find it ourselves later. Li Yundong nodded and secretly guessed what the property of the Fox Zen School was. Along the way, he and Su Chan made guesses. Su Chan sat in the back seat of the taxi and said with sparkling eyes, if I had to guess, I guess the property of the Fox Zen School is either a clothing store or a cosmetic store. If not, it would be a snack bar. Li Yundong laughed and scolded, you foodie, you only know how to eat. If I had to guess, I guess it's some kind of company. Su Chan said angrily, isn't it the same as not saying anything? The two of them chatted and laughed, and the car had already entered Hong Kong Street, Muda District. At this time, it was already 5 o'clock in the evening. The sky had just turned dark, but the street had already been decorated with lanterns and colored banners. At first, they could see some promotional banners, but after Li Yundong got out of the car, he saw that the shampoo and foot washing rooms were lined up along the way, and all kinds of charming slogans were in sight. There was a lot of traffic on both sides of the road, and all of them were male office workers who had gotten off work and were going in and out of such entertainment places, laughing and debauching. Li Yundong was stunned and had a bad feeling in his heart. He asked a man who was in a hurry on the side of the road for the address of 328, Hong Kong Street. The man smiled ambiguously and said, oh. You'll see it if you walk 30 meters ahead. Li Yundong nodded and thanked him, then walked forward with Chow Yi, Su Chan, Zi Yuan, and the others, who were also stunned. After walking for more than 30 meters, Li Yundong found that in front of him was a luxuriously decorated entertainment city, with a few golden words written on it, Crystal Love International Entertainment City. These words were surrounded by colorful lights that flickered incessantly, making it seem extravagant and ostentatious. The 2 rows of receptionists at the entrance had graceful figures. They wore sexy low-cut cheongsams with a V-neck. The cleavage almost reached the navel, and the slit of the skirt under the cheongsams almost reached the armpits. Li Yundong saw that most of the people going in and out of this shop were men. Every time a man entered, they would bend over, revealing their bodies, and call out sweetly, hello, boss. Hello, boss. Hello, boss. Li Yundong felt as if an atomic bomb had exploded in his mind, causing the sky to shake and the earth to darken. This. The expression on Li Yundong's face was very interesting. Isn't this the legendary red light district? What kind of F*King International Entertainment City is this? Come on, isn't this Miss City? Zhou Qin had long noticed that something was wrong, but she didn't say anything. She just pursed her lips and snickered, as if she was ready to watch the fun. Su Chan was naive and didn't notice anything. She curiously pointed to the 2 waitresses at the door and asked, aren't they afraid of the cold? Although Chow Yi had not seen much of the world, she was an old fox after all. She quickly noticed that something was wrong and said, maybe we're in the wrong place. Li Yundong forced a smile and said, maybe. As he said this, He stopped a middle-aged man who was about to walk into the Crystal Love International Entertainment City and asked, "Hello, is 328, Hong Kong Street here?" Although he asked, he was praying repeatedly in his heart, "This is not the property of the Fox Zen School, this is not the property of the Fox Zen School." The man looked Li Yundong up and down, then glanced greedily at Su Chan and the others behind Li Yundong. He said with jealousy and envy, "Nonsense, of course it is. Brother, why do you still come out to play when you have so many excellent people around you? Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning?" After that, he flicked his sleeves and left. When he entered the door, the waitress bent down again, revealing a large area of snow-white skin. She shouted sweetly, "Hello, boss." Li Yundong was dumbfounded. He thought to himself, "Damn, this is really the property of the Fox Zen School. What kind of place is this Fox Zen School? No wonder people call it a devil. Its only property is actually a damn service industry." Su Chan, who hadn't reacted yet, excitedly said, "Come out to play. Is it fun here? I want to go play too." Li Yundong slapped Su Chan on the forehead and glared at her. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Su Chan was startled. She put her hands on her forehead and blinked at Li Yundong. She felt wronged and confused, not knowing what she had said wrong. At this time, both Zi Yuan and Wan Hongling saw the clues. Zi Yuan frowned slightly, while Wan Hongling blushed slightly. She spat and said, "Bah, what kind of place is this?" Su Chan was not stupid. She rolled her eyes and looked at everyone's reaction. Then, she looked at the beautiful waitress at the door, who was not like an ordinary woman. She suddenly realized something and her face turned red. She took Li Yundong's hand and whispered, "Yundong, are we in the wrong place?" Li Yundong had never expected that the Fox Zen School he had taken over would not only be a rotten mess, but also that the only industry with a source of income was actually a place that engaged in prostitution. He sucked in a breath of cold air, his heart filled with anger. He ignored Su Chan and walked in by himself. The waitresses at the door had been paying attention to Li Yundong for a long time. They even wondered if Li Yundong would come in. One of them guessed, "Of course not." Look at the beautiful women around him, each more beautiful than the other. Why would he come in to have sex? Others retorted disdainfully, "Who said that? House flowers are not as fragrant as wild flowers. Men are all cheap." While they were muttering, they saw Li Yundong rushing inside aggressively. They immediately stood up and prepared to bow, but they saw the anger hidden between Li Yundong's brows and a boldness that ordinary people did not have. In the blink of an eye, he rushed in, followed by 5 or 6 beautiful women, each with a different look in their eyes. The girls who were begging outside had sharp eyes. They immediately felt their hearts beat like drums and thought that something was wrong. One of them immediately waved to the girl not far away and whispered, "Call Mei Nyang. I'm afraid she's here to cause trouble." Sure enough, Li Yundong came to the lobby, looked around, and said in a deep voice, "Who is in charge here?" Mei Nyang rushed over immediately. This woman was about 30 years old and was wearing a seductive and sexy long dress. She was quite beautiful, but there was a lot of dust between her eyebrows. She walked over with a charming smile, looked at Li Yundong, and then glanced at Su Chan and the others behind him. She covered her mouth and exclaimed, "Mei Nyang, I started my career at the age of 16. I've been doing business for so many years, but this is the first time I've seen a guest come to play and bring his own goods. Amazing, amazing, I admire you. Boss, are you here to play or to make trouble, comma, // 7854627895541. Chapter 306. Go to watch net. Li Yundong looked Mei Nyang up and down and saw that this woman was very much like a chicken head. He frowned and asked in a deep voice, "Are you in charge here?" As the saying goes, women are the best business cards for men. Mei Nyang, who had been in the circle of fame and fortune all year round, naturally knew this very well. She saw that Li Yundong had an extraordinary bearing and was accompanied by so many beautiful women. Obviously, he was not an ordinary person. She didn't dare to neglect him and said with an apologetic smile, "Thank you for your care. I'm the mother here. May I know your name?" Li Yundong wanted to ask Mei Nyang if this was the property of the Fox Zen school, but he looked around and saw that everyone in the hall was looking at them. Li Yundong said, "Let's find a place to sit down and talk. How about that?" Lady Mei rolled her eyes and pointed in a direction. "Then let's go into the private room and talk. Watch net. Updated at a very fast speed." Mei Nyang snapped her fingers and called over a supervisor with heavy makeup. She said, "Go to the second floor and open a large VIP's room." The foreman nodded and gave some instructions through the walkie-talkie. Mei Nyang turned around and smiled at Li Yundong, then led the way. Wan Hongling saw that this woman was covered in dust and her slender waist swayed 3 times as she walked. She scolded in a low voice, "Shameless." Mei Nyang heard this clearly, but she had heard this kind of thing many times, so she did not take it to heart. She just smiled slightly. Li Yundong followed her all the way and only felt that the decoration of this entertainment city was quite luxurious. The whole building was Western style, and it was surrounded by gold and jade. Occasionally, there were hot women in revealing clothes passing by, and Li Yundong could smell a pungent perfume. When they reached the second floor, Li Yundong followed Mei Nyang into an extremely spacious VIP room. This private room was like a presidential suite. The living room was covered with a sand carpet, and there was a huge plasma TV. There was a huge bed inside, and there was a bathroom next to the bedroom. It could be said that everything was available. After entering the room, Mei Nyang politely invited Li Yundong and the others to the sofa. She smiled and asked, "This boss is so young. I've been in this business for so long, but I've never seen such a handsome guy like you." Although her words were a compliment, the flattery and innate charm in her tone were obvious. Zhou Qin and Zi Yuan, who were next to her, frowned. Li Jiandong didn't beat around the bush. He went straight to the point and said, "Hello, my surname is Li. Do you know Lu Yi?" When Mei Nyang heard this, her whole body shook, and her smile stiffened. Lu Yi? Who was he? I've never heard of it. Li Yundong quickly caught Mei Nyang's expression and said, "Don't lie in front of a real person. Do you know him or not? I can tell you that we can say that we are Lu Ye's friends, and we are looking for you for some information. Watch net. 7 KOM. Mei Nyang's eyes scanned Li Yundong and the others warily. Seeing that Li Yundong's expression didn't seem to be fake, she said, "Yes, I know Lu Yi." "What's the matter?" Li Yundong asked, "What's your relationship with Lu Yi?" Mei Nyang became more vigilant. "Why are you asking this?" At this time, Zi Yuan sent a voice transmission to Li Yundong, "She's a human, not a fox spirit. She might be an outer disciple." Li Yundong understood and asked, "Are you his master and disciple?" Unexpectedly, Mei Nyang was stunned and suddenly burst into laughter. Tears flowed out of her eyes. She wiped away her tears and said with a smile, "I'm his master and disciple." "Who did you hear that from? Did he tell you?" "Huh, I'm dying of laughter." Li Yundong said in a deep voice, "Then what's your relationship with him? Could it be?" Mei Nyang's eyes widened. "Could it be what? Mistress?" "Hey, that's right, this dead man is my mistress." After she explained the relationship, she simply sat on the sofa and crossed her legs. She took out a lady's cigarette and lit it skillfully. She took a puff and exhaled a rising smoke ring. She said, "You don't look like bad people. Tell me, what are you doing here? Don't tell me that you are the illegitimate children of Lu Yi. You came to ask me for alimony. I don't have that kind of money." Li Yundong originally thought that this woman was Lu Ye's outer disciple, but he hadn't expected that she was his mistress. He was sweating in his heart and thought to himself, Lu Yi is really a treasured knife that doesn't grow old. As the leader of the sect, he actually has a mistress outside. There's no reliable person in the Fox Zen school. What the hell is going on? Since they were lovers, Li Yundong couldn't put on the airs of the leader of the sect. He secretly wiped his sweat and said, "That's not the case. I'm just here to tell you something and ask you something." Mei Nyang smoked casually and squinted at him. "What is it? Tell me, why didn't this dead man come to see me himself?" Li Yundong thought for a moment and said carefully, "Lu Yi is dead." Mei Nyang smoking suddenly froze. Her face was wooden and she couldn't speak for a long time. After a while, 2 drops of tears fell from her face. She murmured, "You dead man, you didn't come to see me for a long time. I thought you were dead somewhere. It turns out that you're really dead." She murmured to herself for a while, then wiped away the tears and sadness on her face, as if nothing had happened just now. She asked, "Is that why you came to see me?" Li Yundong was speechless when he saw that she had gotten rid of her sadness so quickly. He thought for a moment, then simply stood up and said, "Well, we came to tell you about this. Go to the internet." Mei Nyang muttered, "Is there a need to mobilize so many people? He even brought so many beautiful women with him, which will make the ladies here feel so inferior that they won't dare to receive guests later." Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard this. He took the lead and walked out. Chao Yi suddenly asked, "Zhang. Li Yundong, are you leaving just like that?" Li Yundong glanced at her and said meaningfully, "Is there anything else you want to do?" Chao Yi didn't dare to have any other opinions. She smiled dryly and didn't say anything. When Li Yundong walked to the door, he suddenly stopped, turned around, and asked, "By the way, do you know Lu Ye's real identity?" Mei Nyang was still leaning lazily on the sofa with her legs crossed. She blew out a smoke ring and said leisurely, "In our line of work, we only care about the money in the customers' wallets. Why should we care about what they do?" Li Yundong frowned. "Aren't you and him?" Mei Nyang didn't wait for him to finish and interrupted him with a sneer, "So what? In the end, wasn't he just going to wash his hands of her? All I know is that he comes and goes like a ghost all day long. When he misses me, he comes to me. When he doesn't miss me, he throws me aside. I'm worse than an inflatable doll." Hearing this, Li Yundong broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't say anything more, turned around, and left. After he took Su Chan and the others out of the entertainment city, Su Chan asked in confusion, "Yundong, why didn't you ask her about the property of our Fox Zen school?" Chao Yi also took the opportunity to agree. "Yes, yes." Li Yundong said with a sullen face, "Let alone whether this is the property of the Fox Zen school or not, even if it is, I won't take it. Can this kind of money be used? As a cultivator, don't you think it's hot to use it? Moreover, didn't you hear what Mei Nyang said? She is neither a disciple of the Fox Zen school nor Lu Yi. This is not under the control of our Fox Zen school. No matter how much power I have, I can't make her do anything. Moreover, she is a lover of the former leader. Didn't you hear what she said just now? There is a hidden meaning in her words. She is on guard against us. Unless we have evidence in our hands to prove that this is the property of the Fox Zen school, how can we ask for it?" Li Yundong paused for a moment and said, "Even if there is evidence, I don't want it. I didn't care about it before, but since I've taken over the Fox Zen school, I can't get involved in this kind of thing in the future. Won't it be shameful if it gets out? What will other cultivation sects think of our Fox Zen school? Li Yundong's words made Chao Yi feel embarrassed. The little girl beside her muttered, "The last time I went back to the Fox Zen school with my master, I saw that the outer disciples were all wearing heavy makeup." The expression on Zi Yuan's face was strange, but she still asked with concern, "Li Yundong, do you have any other plans without this source of income?" Li Yundong sighed and was about to speak when he suddenly saw Mainyang chasing after him from the entertainment city. She shouted, "Hey, handsome guy, wait." Chao Yi and Su Chan's hearts skipped a beat. Could it be that this woman has a conscience and wants to give this property to us? However, they saw the woman run up to Li Yundong with a charming smile and hand over a business card. She winked at Li Yundong and said in a coquettish voice, "Handsome guy, since we met today, it's fate. Here, this is my business card. When you want to come out to play, call me." Although the quality of the ladies here is not as good as the ones around you, as the saying goes, home flowers are not as fragrant as wild flowers. You know what I mean. After that, she giggled and blew Li Yundong a kiss, then turned around and swayed back. Li Yundong stared blankly at the business card in his hand. "Damn, do I look like a whorehouse?" Su Chan saw that this woman had actually seduced Li Yundong in front of her and even said that this guy was not as fragrant as wild flowers. No matter how scheming she was, she couldn't help but get angry. She jumped up, rushed to Li Yundong's side, and patted his clothes hard with her hands, as if she wanted to help him sweep away the smell of cosmetics. "You've gone too far," Su Chan said angrily. "How could you say such a thing? You're so shameless." Li Yundong threw away the business card in his hand, clapped his hands, and coughed dryly. Okay, let's leave quickly. Don't you look bad standing here?" The women glared at the entertainment city and left with a belly full of resentment. Along the way, Ruan Hongling and Su Chan were surprisingly the same, swearing at Mainyang. After listening for a while, Li Yundong couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. He said, Okay, you two, calm down. The most important thing now is to quickly think of a way to open up a source of income." As soon as he said this, the others all looked worried. Even Zi Yuan frowned. Zhou Qin, who was beside her, said softly, "Why don't we buy the shop I mentioned first?" Li Yundong smiled bitterly and said, "You're right, but distant water can't quench present thirst." Just when several famous figures in the cultivation world were at their wits' end because of Brother Kong Fong, a young woman suddenly ran over from the side with a stack of leaflets in her hand. She said enthusiastically, "Hello." Then, she handed over a leaflet. Li Yundong took it but didn't look at it. Su Chan, Ruan Hongling, and Chao Yi all took one. Only Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin's temperament was so cold that the young woman didn't dare to offend them, so she didn't hand over the leaflet. Li Yundong glanced at it and saw that it was an advertisement for Tai Guanyin. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry.